Looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Distilling 101 Q&A. So let me get this link to Clint. I guess he's probably working Saturday. Busy day for him. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Now, just let everybody know. Well, I'll say it later. There are probably not enough people here right now to announce that we're not going to be here next weekend. We're going to be in Maggie Valley. But let me refresh this. Get this link to Clint. In case he's able to take over if something goes wrong. I sent him people may want I send him this link in case my internet or something goes down. He can at least open up the podcast and say canceled or try to work a little while. Damn. I seen a lot of them. Who the hell is Clint on here? Wow, let's see. Let me try this again. How do I miss that? I have to look for a skull and crossbones. That's easier than looking for the name. Here we go. All right, so what's going on? There he is on a 5-minute break. Good deal, bro. What's going on, Greg? Good to see you, brother. No problem, Greg. Hey, that's what we're here for, man, to help everybody out and help make the hobby more enjoyable and to spread the knowledge and hopefully learn something too at the same time. I learn a lot on here, so need a good peach brandy recipe. Well, I can tell you, basically starting with as many peaches as you can. Really, I mean, I hate saying that, but really the limiting factor a lot of times is expense and buying the peaches, and a lot of times it gets expensive and we have to substitute some peaches and sacrifice a little bit in quality to use fewer peaches, a little bit of water and sugar, right, to help balance it out, because a true brandy just is just the fruit, right? It doesn't have any sugar and water. So that gets very expensive. If you live in a peach grove area or near, have some peach farmers or a bunch of peach trees in your yard and they're free, then by all means use as many as you can and just use the gravity. I say it 1,000 times and I'll say it every night if I have to. Using your hydrometer and just being able to measure the sugars, if you can just get by with just the peach juice from the peaches, press them out, of course, remove the pits, grind up the peaches, use pectic enzyme, and any meaty, fleshy fruit like that will help remove more of the juices and break down some of the fibers and cell walls and allow more of the juices and natural sugars out. And you'll get a little bit more production out of that, and a little more flavor. But using that hydrometer and just using as many peaches as you can possibly afford. But if you have to use, let me find a chart here, and I'll do this before I send out these links. And don't let me forget to send out the links. I've done that before. Don't want that to happen again. But let me find this chart. I think it's like 5, and it depends. Peaches, if they're fresh peaches. Sometimes they get hard, right? And they're not going to have as many sugars in them. Whereas if you let them sit for, a week or so, and they'll soften up for you and they'll produce more. Here's some ranges though on your peaches. It's going to be kind of in the middle here, about 8.7 grams, of sugar per 100 grams of fruit. So let me pull up another chart that'll tell us exactly how many. And I'm thinking, let's see, is it? Let me find that chart real quickly. Here we go. Peaches fresh, 3 to 6 pounds. I was thinking 6, but 3 to 6. I'd kind of err towards the higher side for a little better quality, but about 6 pounds per gallon. But again, let them get good and fresh and ripe and soft. Don't put them in there hard because they really don't have a whole lot of sugar. That's awesome. Yeah, if you can get them for free, that's great. Go to the higher side. If you're having to pay a pretty good price, buck 49, 69, 89, or something like that a pound, then you might want to cheat to the 3 pounds and add more sugar and water. But use your hydrometer. So once you get all the peaches that you have pressed, and let the pectic enzymes work overnight, give them about 24, 48 hours, and then extract some of that juice and see what kind of gravity you got, and if you're at a pretty good 1070, 1080, then you're good to go. And you can just use peaches and you'll get the most flavor that way, but it's very expensive. You can start substituting, a gallon of water with about a pound and a half of sugar in each gallon. Make a syrup, right? Take a gallon of water and a pound and a half of sugar. Heat that water up real good, dissolve that sugar in it real well. And the reason we heat it up and dissolve the sugar isn't just for dissolving the sugar. A lot of times, lactobacillus and some other things, are on that sugar. I got a lacto infection 100%. I know from sugar because I put it in without dissolving it because I really needed the extra gravity. And I should have, melted it, made the syrup, but we don't always practice what we preach. And I got a lacto infection as a result. It didn't start till late, so it wasn't bad. But yeah, heat it up so you lower the risk, especially if you're going to make a wine. You definitely don't want that lacto in there. So either you need to get it above 160, 80 degrees, and then pour it over it, and then or dissolve your sugar in it. But also over the peaches, it doesn't hurt to get those hot as well. A lot of times winemakers will use what's called Campden tablets, and that's a potassium metabisulfate, and that'll kill basically any bacteria, any calm yeast, any lactobacillus, and a lot of bacterias and other things that can, cause problems. Most all your winemakers will use that. They simply don't want to have that hot water to their fruit because it does take a little bit away. If it were a wine, it does take some of that flavor away, that heat does. So let me 25 pounds, right? Yeah, if you can get by without adding the sugar, it's awesome. But not everybody has the luxury of getting all the free peaches. So sometimes they have to kind of meet in the middle, and go with as much peaches as you can, but add, water and sugar to keep the gravity up so you get some production as well. But it's not a true brandy if you do that. Right. And how much, if you can, Gordon, try to guesstimate how many pounds of peaches it makes to get a gallon of juice. I have to use that pectic enzyme. I know with apples, I've done that. I should have done it with the peaches last time I did it, and I didn't. But with just pure apples alone and pectic enzyme, I'm able to get about a gallon of apple juice for about 20 to 22 pounds of apples. And that gets expensive considering what it costs just to buy a gallon. A couple bucks versus how much is 22 pounds of apples. That's going to be 20 bucks plus, unless you get free. So yeah, there's no right or wrong as far as this goes, but to get better quality, the more fruit that you can use and the less water and sugar you can use, the better. But if you can't afford that, then we gotta kind of cut corners and make sacrifices there. But let me get these links shared, and then we'll get back into the discussion. Let's see, where's my notepad? Here we go. I'll be right back with y'all. Get these links out. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. But most, if you could use that hydrometer, and again, start with as much fruit as you can afford. And then, if you're not getting either the gravity or you're not getting the volume that you need with just the juice, with what's the poundage that you can get, then yeah, you're going to have to sacrifice quality a little bit, especially in the brandies and then the wines. With wines, if you can go with all fruit, and with brandies, if you can go with all fruit, that's definitely the way you want to go. You're definitely going to get a lot better quality. You're going to get a lot better taste, but it comes at a cost for those that have to buy it. So it's a trade-off. But yeah, using that hydrometer will definitely be your guide. And if you get over a 1080, then you can add water because you definitely don't, even with, real sweet fruit, definitely don't want to exceed that. And you can kind of sacrifice a little bit on um, quantity when you do that. So I got a few more to get out there, and we'll see how many they'll let me share this time. We will see. But yeah, the hydrometer is one of the most important tools. Both proofing and hydrometer and the triple scale hydrometer are one of the most important tools you'll have, and they're very inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon or from Phil Billy and other people. I think maybe $4 or $5 each if you get by 2 or 3 of them at a time. Yeah, they're not real expensive, and they're invaluable, really. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, old timers didn't use those." You're right, they didn't. They've been around for a long time, and no, they weren't out in the woods. But I can assure you, if we could have got them for $4 back in the day and had that, especially the triple scale, But most of the time, we pretty much had recipes that we followed, so we didn't really need to deviate those. We really didn't. And again, once you do have that hydrometer and you fall into let me find this link here. Once you do fall into a good recipe, you just make the notation, of course, wine, and then you can follow the same, recipe every time. And you'll have less and less need for your hydrometer, right? So once you get, but the fruit will vary. That's why a lot of times you'll see on that chart, especially, you'll see varying weights. And I think on the apples, there's a huge discrepancy between the low and high end. And that's because, if you get some like green crab apples, they're going to be kind of sour, not hardly any sugar at all, versus of Fuji or even some of your more sweeter apples that are going to have a ton of sugars in them. So also will vary on your fruit and on the ripeness of the fruit. So you have to take all those into account. You'd think I'd be able to find these things on this list easier. Let's see how many I can share this time. Well, that's one more than I got last week or Tuesday. Lately, about right here has been about all I'm going to get. We'll see. Well, getting a few more out, at least a couple. That's good. Got Mr. Hatley's group out. I'd love to be able to just get them all out, but we know that ain't going to happen. I think back in the day, I used to be able to get pretty much most of them out, but I have added a few groups since. I've been, a few groups have requested that I add my links to it because they enjoy it too. So I think a lot of their members enjoy it. So the list is getting bigger. And that brings me up, if you do have a group that you're in and you would like for this podcast to be shared to that group as well, tell the admins to get up with them. Okay, so we stopped there this week. All right. So we'll pick back up there in an hour or so. If you can remind me. All right, Gordon, let me get this list off here. What's going on, Seashine? Yeah, buckets and buckets. That's awesome, man. So you have orchards close to you, or you have your own orchard, or I know a lot of orchards don't like bruised fruits or fruits that are on the ground. And I mentioned it last week. So if you have some around you, go talk to the owners. Just be cool and just say, look, I'm not going to pick any off the trees. But anything off the ground that's got some yellow jackets on it, got bruises, can I have those? Because that won't affect your brandy at all. So talk to them. A lot of times, if you look trustworthy and kind, and maybe give them something in return, like some peach wine, not some shine, but some peach wine. Maybe they'll be happy because you mentioned shine. It kind of whoa, it freaks some of them out. You don't have to. No, if you want to, just keep using as much as you can. Get the juice out of it. Use some pectic enzymes and get all the juice that you can. And let me know how many peaches it takes to get a gallon, and also what just your gravity is on these specific peaches. Because I know it will vary. What's going on, Sam? 30 pounds. Is that per gallon? You'll get 30 or 40 pounds. How much per gallon? How much will give you a gallon? Just out of curiosity. The infection, well, you can get lots of different infections. Fruit flies tend to carry acetobacters, and it's just a part of natural fruit decay as well, but it's called an acetobacter. And it creates in fermentation, when you have these acetobacters present, you get acetic acid, and that will basically turn into a vinegar in the presence of oxygen. So if you don't heat it up, you can get the acetobacters, and it can turn to vinegar. Other infections are like a lactobacillus. That'll be on sugar, and probably, you can get lactic acid. It can be a carryover from a prior fermentation if you don't keep everything sanitized and sterile. Lactic acid can carry over, and it can create a lactobacillus. The other is wild yeast. It's called a calm yeast, and it's definitely going to be on that fruit. And it's spelled KAHEM. It's a wild yeast. It's calm yeast, and it'll create a white film on the top towards the end of fermentation. So there's others as well, but those are primarily the ones that we'll run into. Oh, that's why I like that steep method, Patty. It's if you steep it and just keep that boiling water and keep adding it and keep those temperatures up, that's the best way I've found to avoid the scorching. I think Tom or somebody posted a link of some new content creator from West Virginia was making some shine. And he's trying, he's trying to, get out some videos and do content creation, and trying to appease his crowd. He got quite a good following, but yeah, he was cooking the shit out of he had like 3.5 pounds per gallon of corn at least, and it was getting thick, and he was cranking it up on a turkey fryer, which we know focuses that heat. And sure enough, I saw little black specks poking up as he stirred it with a mop handle, the rubber side down, which is crazy. But hopefully we can get him on here and help fill in some of the gaps. He used some alpha amylase, but didn't use the glucose, so didn't understand full conversions and all that. But steeping, is really a great way to go until you learn your cooker and learn to back that heat down and just use it to, instead of cooking, to use it to maintain the heat. But again, if you're doing a 10-gallon mash, start with 7 and keep 3 boiling to the side. And I mean hard boiling to the side. And every 15 minutes or so, as needed, pour some into that 7 gallons and keep that temperature above 185, right? And the longer you can do that, the better gelatinization you'll get, and definitely won't run the risk of scorching. Another way is to use a double boiler method. If you got a pot bigger than the pot you're using to cook in, you can put water in the bottom pot and do the double boiler method, and have that water rolling, boiling, and keep that 185 maintained easily, right? That'll help hold in the heat. That's another good way to do it. But yeah, steeping works real well. So if you got a cooler, or if you can make a mash barrel that's insulated, I know some people wrap blankets, some people get, fancy. You can get the spray foam and get like a 55-gallon drum and put a 40 inside that and just spray foam around it, or use plastic peanuts, anything to help, insulate. That helps too. Yeah, yeah, good peach wine, man. Peach wine's awesome. That's why a lot of times, man, it's hard for me to it's hard for me to get past some of these wines when I'm thinking of making a brandy. Once I make the wine and get the wine, it's just so good. It never makes it to the brandy stages. So let me know how many pounds per will make a gallon. That's something that I want to keep track of and notate. 8 gallons of juice between 30 and 40 pounds. Okay, cool. So maybe 5 pounds or 6 pounds a gallon, maybe. Trying to do the math here. Five times 8 is 40. So about between 5, 6, 7 pounds per gallon. Okay. Because they are quite heavy. Did you use pectic enzymes? I'm not following you, Gordon. You can't use it if you're going to have a hydrometer. Well, the proofing hydrometer, no, but the triple scale hydrometer. I was just saying having those two tools is necessary. The triple scale is absolutely what you need to help you. And you don't want to drop it in the mash, the thick, mushy stuff, because it won't read properly. You want to extract the juice from it and just measure the juices for your sugar content. Awesome, awesome. That's what we like to hear, brother. Third run, it took me quite a few when I first got started when I was young. I scorched a lot. I didn't know much about cooking, and I scorched the first probably 3, 4, 5 runs at least. And we drank it anyway. It was horrible. What's going on, Gip? Good to see you, brother. Cook down maple sap, right? Right. To maple syrup. Absolutely, you can do that. And we were talking about doing that maybe with some watermelon, because watermelon, it just doesn't. It's got a lot of liquid, and as a result, it doesn't have a lot of the sugar. So we're thinking maybe reduce, some of the liquids off of them, and to increase the gravity. Absolutely will work. Just don't want to go too hot to where you caramelize a lot of those sugars and make them complex. But yeah, just a slow reduction definitely would be a good idea. Hey Marie, how you doing? Just mashed in some strawberries and a mash of raspberries. Exhausted. Yeah, it does. And I tell you what, I remember the first time I did strawberries, I was really surprised at how little sugar are in a strawberry. I was amazed. Not much sugar at all. Let me put the chart up here, and it'll show you on here too. You'd think strawberries would be right up here at the top. I think there's more. I think there's more sugar, yeah, in a grapefruit than a strawberry, and you would never guess that, would you? It's crazy. Yeah, just strawberries are you think they're naturally sweet, but it's just that good flavor. But there's not a lot of sugars in a strawberry. So, and I think that's one of the reasons when people use the hydrometer or follow strawberry recipes, and there's usually a lot of sugar to bring up, the gravity, because there's not a lot of juice in them either. So, it's not going to be like Matt was talking about, reducing like a watermelon or at least some fruit that has lots of juices. There's just not a lot of juice in a strawberry to reduce down to increase the gravity. So you almost inevitably have to use sugar, or better yet, use a dextrose or an inverted sugar, or some corn sugar or some different type sweetener, whatever you prefer. I like to use dextrose. It doesn't give it that much of a hotness, but they work at the orchard. That's awesome. So yeah, if you can get them, yeah, buddy, we all do. Man, I tell you what, I've gone to some secondhand fruit places and got some really good deals there, and there's lots of you got to get out. That's awesome. 40 pounds. You get 8 gallons, so about 5 pounds per gallon. I guess that makes it. Yeah, about 5 pounds a gallon. That's good. I'll have to notate that. Make a note of that because I'm going to try to keep a little chart of. I know exactly with apples, it's like 20 to 22 pounds. And I'm supposing these are probably some pretty sweet and juicy. 40 pounds, about 8 gallons. So that's 5. Yep. Yeah, we'll kind of, because grapes don't produce a lot either. Did freeze them first? Good deal. Which one? The acetobacters, the vinegar one, or the lactobacillus? The it's not so bad if it comes late. The calm yeast, it just basically fights for the same nutrients and things that your yeast. It'll consume alcohol and it'll consume sugar. And calm yeast, generally, a lot of people don't mind it. It works off really quickly, but it does leave a film on the top. But yeah, the acetobacters can turn it into definitely can turn it into a vinegar. Alfredo dealt with that. My buddy Alfredo was just talking about that. He had a mash and it turned to vinegar, and we were talking about that. Yeah, steeping is the best way to go. Or like I said, if you got a pot, you can sit in a pot and have that outside pot boiling to maintain that temperature. Like we're talking, you won't have to ladle in a little bit each time. It'll just maintain that temperature for you just fine. But if you use like a big cooler, if you get one of those big fishing coolers or something, yeah, you could just pour, start out 7, hypothetically, if you're doing 10, just keep 20, 30% out and add a little bit at a time to help maintain that high temperature that we need to gelatinize. What's going on, John? Good to see you, brother. So you made Hillbilly or Philbilly's liquor class. That's awesome. Yeah, he's a great guy and he knows a lot. Yeah, he's been at it a long time. That's my brother. A great guy. And yeah, those classes are awesome. If anybody gets a chance, definitely, take one of those classes. Definitely learn a lot. And it's a lot of fun. Get to meet a lot of people in the community and have a lot of fun and get to watch Big Easy eat some of that fermented fish. Did y'all see that video? Man, that stuff is so gross. I've smelled it before. There's no way I'd eat that. I can't believe they actually put that in their mouth. 13-gallon pot. Yeah, the strawberry comes out. That's good. It could come out pretty hot if you add the sugars and use the hydrometer because it does to get it to the gravity that you want to start with to get some production. It does take a little bit of sugar, or dextrose, or inverted sugar, or many other things that you can use. But unfortunately, most people just use sugar. Dextrose is good. It's yeast really like it. It doesn't stress them. It's not a disaccharide; it's a monosaccharide, so it's very easy for them to consume, and they consume it fast. Sometimes some people consider it too vigorous, but yeah. But if you do use the strawberry and you do use a lot of sugar, don't forget those oyster shells because as a result of all those sugars, the pH can crash pretty quickly on you on a lot of those higher sugar mashes and washes. What's going on, Mark? Good to see you, brother. Hope everything's doing well with you, my friend. Yep. Everybody be safe, especially this next weekend. I want to mention it while we got more people in there now. I mentioned something at the very beginning, and there were probably wasn't a lot of people here. We're not going to be here next Saturday. We're going to be in Maggie Valley. So I doubt I'll do a live stream at that time at 8 or 9, because by 8 or 9 o'clock I'm gonna be smashed. But we may get on here and do a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I'll be having a good time. And if you can make it to Maggie, come on down, have a good time, meet us, bring us a jar. Don't bring it into the festival. They're very watching. It's not a place to bring in to try to sneak in liquor. But afterwards, there's lots of parties. There's a motel right next to the venue that lets us kind of hang out in the parking lot and party a little bit. Keep it cool and don't get real loud, and we have a pretty good time. It's always been a good time in the past, and we'll share a few jars there. But it's a lot of fun, and just as long as everybody maintains and it maintains cool, then it'll be good. Absolutely can use brown sugar. In fact, brown sugar and peaches makes a really good rum. It's a peach rum, and I guess it doesn't get the heaviness and the dinginess that the blackstrap or the molasses will bring. But I think a brown sugar kind of adds that flavor, but not overwhelming. And I think it works well with peaches, bananas, and other fruits that you want to make rums with. But you can add a little bit of the molasses. I would much rather use the molasses than the blackstrap. But always make sure it's unsulfured in a decent grade, and yeah, it definitely makes some interesting flavors, and it'll make a good peach rum for sure. It'll be a little different than the brandy you're used to. It gives it a little different flavor, but it is pretty good for sure. I like using it. The Blue Ridge, hell yeah. We used to go there a lot when I was a kid, man. When in the Scouts, the Tweetsy Railroad, and all the sites and attractions, we used to go there. And we used to hike quite a bit. But yeah, that's awesome. I got a little bit of property close to there, but not in the Blue Ridge, but Virginia. Yep. Thank you, Marie. Yeah, we'll chat later. Take care. 40 pounds. Cool, cool. And you didn't use any sugars and or sweeteners. And what did you check the gravity? Did you get the gravity reading from 40 gallons? I'd be interested. And did you use pectic enzymes? Because freezing helps a whole lot, but still using those pectic enzymes will break down a lot of that flesh that's still there even after freezing. Freezing helps open up the cell walls because inside the cell there's going to be water and sugars. And when they freeze, of course, water expands when it freezes, right? So it helps break open those cells. But also some of that pulpiness, that makes it kind of harder to work with. Those pectic enzymes will break those down. And a lot of, I used to believe that the cellulose created more heads, but technically the pectic enzymes will create more ethanol, help you create more ethanol um, than methanol. So it's good to use. What's going on, Mash Brothers? Yeah, man, they go hard and fast. But I always Maggie Valley next week is Hillbilly Jam, and it's an annual festival. It's more of a music festival, but us shiners have kind of adopted it. It's in Maggie Valley where they shoot the Moonshiner show, so there's always a bunch of shiners there. North Georgia's always there. And Mark and Digger. Mark will usually show up, and a few people from the show will be there. Amanda's usually there. A lot of other characters from the show will sometimes show up there, so it's a lot of fun. What's going on, brother? Doing good, brother. How about yourself? What's going on, Mikey? Good to see you, brother. I finally got all my pieces to my column, and I didn't have. Can you believe I only sent one clamp? one tri clamp with that 4-inch column. There's 2 ends to the column, and but I only set one clamp. So I had to give Phil Billy a call and get me a couple clamps. Got them in today, so hopefully I'll be able to do something this week. We'll see. Mowing the yard, man. Hope you don't have too big a yard or it's not too hot there, man. I got about a third of an acre. It's not too bad, but I use a push mower. I need to get that riding mower going. I'm getting too old to push that thing. It's wearing me out. Used to be the only exercise I got, and it's with this heat. I don't mind it in the 80s, but man, these high 90s and hundreds with all the humidity, it's a lot. But I got to mow this week before I go. I'm a beginner. I still use the old man's method. Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that, brother. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using old methodology. It's tried and proven and true. And a lot of times, they didn't need the hydrometers because, like I said, they got that recipe dialed in. You do the same thing every time, you're going to get the same result every time, right? And as long as you don't, deviate from the norms, you're going to get a pretty good result. So you definitely, if you got a good old recipe, it can help eliminate the needs for these tools. But when you want to create a new recipe, they really come in handy. And if you don't, and just being able to measure your sugars and know when, that mash is getting closer to done, because it can taste bitter. Then you drop that hydrometer in there and it's 1020. You still got a little bit of sugars left that you can get a little more production out of. What is my absolute favorite recipe for whiskey? I like using, it's probably a percentage, right? It's going to be probably about a 60% corn, a 20% barley, 10% wheat, and probably about a 10% oat. I like that combination. I like wheated, and the barley, to help give it that. But about 60 corn, 20 barley. And I always did that because that 20 barley, I used it for converting a lot. Now I use the liquid amylase, so I can deviate from that some if I want to, and I can use 2 row instead of 6 like I used to, get a little more flavor. And then about 10 wheat and 10 oats for sweetness and mouthfeel. It's a good, great recipe. But a lot of people like corn, oats, and barley. And I like adding the wheat to get that extra little sweetness out of it, but some people don't like that. But corn, oats, and barley is probably one of the most popular. If you want to make one that you think everybody's going to like, I think corn, oats, and barley is going to be a really good one. And then you're going to probably do maybe a 65 and 20, do 85, and then, the remaining 15 probably an oat. Going to be there early Thursday. We probably, I usually get there. They have a thing every year where Thursday we go to the nursing home, the local nursing home, and say hi to everybody. I know this is Amanda's thing, and didn't start that way, but she's kind of taken the reign. And we take in, games, coloring books, and visit with them and say hey, and they really appreciate it. So take some snacks and some games. I think I took bingo one year, a little bingo thing. You roll around and do the bingo, and I'm sure they enjoyed that. But take in some board games, cards, Uno or whatever, skip bow cards, whatever you can. A little gift, and they enjoy seeing us every year. So if you can get there Thursday around, I think it starts around 11, that'd be awesome. But it's very rewarding. But this year we're not going to be able to get there until Friday. So we're going to be there Friday early. Yeah, Ann just couldn't get Thursday off, but she's going to take Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. So we'll be able to do that. Yeah, the hydrometer, it's very invaluable. I know if you've got certain recipes that are handed down through the family, you're not going to need it for those. But to kind of create other recipes, and again, it helps tell you when things are done, right? When your fermentation's getting close to done, because I don't know how many times I've tasted something, and in the past, I would have probably been running it, right? And I'd taste it, and that's sour. I'd have run that in the past. Then I'd drop that hydrometer in there. Well, damn, it's 1020. It's still got quite a bit of sugar in there. Damn, I didn't even taste that, right? So, But I do like using, my taste buds and testing myself and the hydrometer. That way, if you ever break it, you're getting better and better at guessing. So taste it at first and try to guess that starting gravity just by tasting it and tasting the sugars and guess, and then drop it in there and see how accurate you were. And then towards the end, taste those before, taste that mash before you put the hydrometer in there and say, well, this tastes like it tastes like it's ready. It's 1-0. And then maybe it's 1-0-1-0 or 1-0-2-0 and you're off. So then you kind of tune and get more used to it. But that is a good way to do it. And I've been wrong quite a bit when it comes to that. It's I don't know, maybe post COVID my taste buds aren't what they used to be. That's my excuse, right? What's going on, Curtis? Good to see you, brother. 20 acres and only one bull. Mo. Yeah, man. Well, hopefully you start planting some fruit trees, Gordon. I talk to everybody I could talk to, man. I wish I would have done that when I was younger, is just plant peach trees, apple trees, plum trees, any kind of tree, that grows indigenously or well in your area. And bushes, blackberries and blueberries and raspberries. Not only will it help you make wines and shines in the future, but it kind of helps you if you have to go to that off-grid living or, survival, it'd be nice to have if, the shit hits the fan and we can't get the stuff through stores, whether it be a heavy snow and we got all these fruits, canned and because we had them, or, floods that we can't get food to the groceries and we're stranded for, weeks at a time. You'll have a lot of vegetables and stuff, jams, jellies, canned fruits and vegetables that you've got put up. Definitely, hope, a lot of people aren't learning the old way, and that's great. Times are good and it's easier to work and go to the store than it is to farm and have all these things. But I think it entitles and spoils a lot of people and people are kind of getting away from canning and foraging and knowing, how to get food off the land and hunting. And I'm afraid if things get bad, man, they're not going to last long. Yeah, there's wild yeast on there for sure. That calm yeast. Let me show you a picture. We showed it last week, and we can show you the difference between the calm yeast and the lacto. That's what we did last week as well. So this is what a lactobacillus is going to look like, and you can see the filamentous growth. It looks like veins going around, and then some bubblage. Got some distinct bubbles. A lot of times those bubbles, people, oh, that looks like penicillin, and kind of, you can get a little bit of penicillin in some of these sometimes. So if you're allergic to that, probably not going to be a good thing. But you can tell by the filament growth, like the lightning filaments in this, it's definitely distinctive. And that's a lactobacillus. And a lot of people like it. It's great later in fermentation. Because it does give it a soft, creamy mouthfeel. A lot of times when people are like making a peach cobbler, for example, to get that cobbler flavor, a lot of people will use oats and some people will use lacto and some people will use a combination of those to get that cobbler soft mouthfeel that makes it taste kind of like the cobbler. And this lacto will help. A lot of people will introduce Greek yogurt to introduce this lacto into their fermentation. But when you do, make sure you clean everything up really well. Use really hot water when you clean it up following it, because if you don't, it can start earlier in your next fermentation. If you've got an infected barrel or infected tools or like wood paddles that you stir with, it really gets into those pores and it can infect it early. And if you have that competing with your yeast for the sugars, and actually will consume alcohol as well. So it can definitely cut down on your production. It can stress the shit out of your yeast, and it can compete with your yeast and beat your yeast out for the sugars, and that will cut back on your production as well. And it's just not good early on. A lot of times when people get it early on, they let it run its course, and then you can kind of pasteurize it, heating it up, and kill it off, and then add some more sugars for your yeast and repitch yeast or pitch yeast for the first time. it's best if you just let it happen towards the end. A lot of times people will skim this off, save it in a jar, and at the end of their fermentation, they'll introduce it to get that soft mouthfeel and cobbler flavor. But again, just make sure that you boil water and clean it real well. Star sand helps disinfect it and kill it off. Definitely, want to clean all your tools real well with it and make sure you get rid of it. Or you can just have a barrel that you're gonna, know that's lacto. And if you want to, once your once your mash gets to a certain point, you can transfer it to the barrel that gets it, and hopefully it catches. If not, pour some from your jar into it, and that way you're not going to infect every barrel you got. You can use this as your lacto barrel, and you can just dump everything into that, add your lacto from the jar, and just use that for that purpose if you want to get that lacto intentionally. But there are also other infections, and let me show you a picture of calm yeast. Now you're gonna definitely see a big difference right off the bat. Here's a great picture of it. Looks really pillowy. It looks almost like dough has covered the surface, and the CO2 is bubbled up and create little air pockets and bubble. Now this is a calm yeast. This is a wild yeast that's created this. So this is here's another picture of it. It won't always be perfect like that. That's a really good picture of one. Sometimes it'll just look like this. And this might actually be a little bit of combination of lacto and calm yeast, which can happen as well. But yeah, and it happens a lot in fruits and stuff that you can. If you don't get them to certain temperatures in your canning and kill a lot of this off, the wild yeast on your fruits that you can will come to haunt you. And that's definitely not something you want to see in your cans of peaches if you open them up that you've preserved. I think I got one more picture here, and it looks similar to that one. I think it was something, I think somebody else had, yeah, it was very similar to that. Actually, I think that's the same one, just zoomed in, as a matter of fact. So, because that part at the top, I think it is the same one zoomed in. Do I have another one? Let's see. Yeah, that's it. And that is zoomed in, so I'm going to delete that out of my files. So it's kind of out of focus anyway. But those are two of the most common infections. Your lactobacillus definitely will have those filaments. Now, the acetobacters and turning into vinegar, that's not something that you will see. That's something that you will get. And generally, it is because you've got oxygen going to it, which is one of the reasons that we want to cover it, use airlocks. I know a lot of people don't. If you're dealing with just a grain, and it's going to be one of those 3 to 5 day things that you just, that it works off really quickly. Most grains do. If you have everything just right, in 3 to 5, 6 days, they're done. They've worked off. You're ready to strain the grain and pump it over or siphon it over into a secondary fermentation to let that settle if you want to, or into your pot if it's settled. So, in 3 to 5 days, you're ready to go. And a lot of these lacto and calm yeast infections take a little bit longer. Now, calm yeast will work off, if it's in there, it'll work off pretty quickly. But the actual filming and all that on the top, that'll actually take a little longer time. But calm yeast and most of your wild yeast generally work off really quickly at the beginning. They don't have alcohol tolerance. They don't have a lower pH tolerance. So what happens is, as your fermentation goes, you get, of course, alcohol content increases, acidity levels, increase. So your pH goes down. And a lot of times that'll kill that calm yeast off. A lot of the distilling yeast and wines and champagne yeast and distillers yeast that we use have been acclimated and selectively bred to tolerate these high alcohol, low pH environments, which is why they're distiller type yeast, right? They've been selectively bred and acclimated to handle these kind of environments. So, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, when you buy the proof or the triple scale hydrometer, let me show you a picture of it so you know which one to get. Definitely want to have them, and I'll show you also a scale that this is it. And you can see at certain levels, it'll tell you like beer, wine, and table wines and all these things. So really, you don't want to get to 1.1. Once you get to 1.1 and above, it starts to get a little bit hot. I know a lot of people that do meads and other things will get a little high on theirs, simply because they won't all ferment out. I know a lot of times people that do rums will go a little higher, again, because they're not using a glucose or a rum yeast that finishes it dry. It'll have some residual sugars at the end, which is okay. And that to get their alcohol, they start out a little higher at 1.1, and then they ended at 1.010. So they're still getting that 9 points. So that's like starting at a 1090, which is a little bit on the high side, but um, you can get an idea how well your conversions went. I will tell you though, these will not tell you if the sugars that you have are fermentable or not. It just measures the sugars based on the viscosity, which is another reason you need to separate a lot of the mashy and particles and pulp and things like that from the liquid to measure with, because a lot of those will affect your how it floats, right? It definitely want to limit those, but definitely. And when you use these, make sure you use them um, at around room temperature, or use the chart that accompanies them. When you buy them, there'll be a little conversion chart. So if you're doing this and it's 90 degrees, you can use your little chart and it'll tell you how much of variance that you're going to have, because it is a little warmer than the 60 degrees it was calibrated on, along with the proofing hydrometer. I think they're calibrated about the same temperature. And I might have a little chart on here. I can't remember if I do or not. Let me look real quickly and see if I have one of those charts. If not, I need to scan one that I've got here somewhere, because I do run into those questions from time to time. And I'm not seeing. Oh, here. This shows you a little bit better about how 1.010, and then you got the beers 1020, and you'll see 5% over to the right. That tells you that's your bricks. The in the middle, that'll tell you your 5% ABV, alcohol by volume, will be that middle number in that chart in the middle. Whereas you see a 1040, 1.040, and that's how it's read, is about a 5%. A 1.080, which is where a lot of us start, is around a 10, 11%, a little about 10 and a half. I guess that's 10, 12, 11, 12. Yeah. So that's about 10.2%, right? And a 1090 is going to be about an 11, almost a 12, right? And then above that, it gets pretty high. So that's typical. Around a 10% is a decent starting point for most mashes and washes. I know rums, people tend to go a little higher. Tequilas, they go a little higher. Any of the washes, they tend to go a little bit higher, and that's fine. But make sure you got those oyster shells in there to help buffer, so you don't get that pH crash and stress your yeast out. And do it at temperatures that whatever yeast you select work best. So that helps a lot. But yeah, I always buy a couple of them. If you have one, it'll break tomorrow. If you have two, it'll last forever. So, and when you do break one, you're limited to just have one. Just get a couple more, or at least get another one, because if you only have one, man, it's going to break. It's just like that, having that last cylinder of gas. I know this should last me, and it never does, right? It always runs out of gas, and you end up having to go get some gas to finish your run. So I always keep a few bottles of gas, and I always keep a couple of hydrometers on hand. It's not a bad thing. So the white on the top is either going to be a lacto, or you can just skim it off. Just skim it off, and you can save it in a jar if you want to use it for a peach cobbler or something, like I say, to add it late. But you definitely, anytime you get it, you're going to have to clean more. If you use the potassium metabisulfate and you get a pretty hygiene, set of standards, and keep things clean and boil or use your potassium metabisulfate, you're not going to run into these. But again, it's easy to have, and it's going to happen. A lot of times people won't cover, and it's fine. Like in a grain, I don't cover my grains because 3 to 5 days, 6 days tops, they're done. It's done. It's ready to run. But if you're one of those people that's like, you know, busy as hell and you don't have the time always, sometimes it's better to cover them and use those, airlocks. I know a lot of them like, oh, they hate them airlocks, and a lot of people, I've never gotten any vinegar. That's all bullshit. And it's bullshit until you get it, right? And then it's not bullshit anymore. It's like, damn, I had a lot of money into that fruit. And it's very common with fruit because those acetobacters are carried by fruit flies and they love getting on that fruit and they'll infect that shit when it's still on the tree, man. It's not just happening at your house. I mean, it's happening in the wild. So it's easy to have those acetobacters. And that's why us brandy makers have the luxury of putting them in boiling water. So when we add the water, we can, put all that fruit juice and everything in that boiling water and kill a lot of that stuff off, right? Whereas winemakers will use that potassium metabisulfate because they don't want to lose the character of the fruit by using that boiling water. And it does take away some of the phenols and some of the flavonoids and stuff that are in that fruit. So to preserve that, a lot of winemakers will just use the potassium metabisulfate, which will gas off over time. And they're usually using a yeast that requires a lower temperature and therefore a longer fermentation time. Grains 3 to 5 days, no biggie, don't have to cover it. Just put a cover over it, just keep the critters out. But, it's not critical. But if you're one of those people that are busy and it might be a month before you can get around to it, not a bad idea. But for the fruits, it's a damn good idea to keep those covered because the fruit flies love it. They carry those acetobacters, and you're in for a longer fermentation period, which increases the possibility of oxygen creating some issues with bacteria and funguses and other things in there. Now molds, let me show you the picture of the molds so we can cover that. I will say I got this off of Amanda. She posted it on Facebook, I think. And it's a good little chart. I'm thinking this is it. Let me see. Slow to come up. Okay, let's try that again. And wait a minute. No, that's not it. I have to use my big handy dandy magnifying glass to see that. Nope, that's not the right one. Let me find this chart. And I appreciate Amanda posting this. Speaking of classes, Amanda has classes too. So there's a lot of great classes you can take out there. Okay, here's a little mold chart. Good little chart to follow. Is it on the top or underneath? If it's on top, is it on going up the neck of the carboy, on the neck of the bucket, or the barrel? Yes. Okay, well, does it cover the entire surface of the liquid? Yes. So is it green, red, black, or blue? If the answer is yes, then chances are that you're going to have a mold. Make sure it's not one of your ingredients. So like this says, so if it's blue looking and you got blueberries, it's not a mold, it's the blueberries. If it's black and you're running blackberries, might not be that black mold. It might just be your blackberries making it look that way. But if it's fuzzy and gets a little furry, definitely a mold. But if you don't have any colors that are causing this color, it's probably a mold. And in which case, probably not going to be good. So when in doubt, pitch it out. But yeah, that was an invalid type that I tried to pop it the first time. But foamy, chunky, like we were talking about, these are called pellicles. So this is called a pellicle. And it's a lacto infection itself. They call it a pellicle. And even the calm yeast is a pellicle. So that's kind of a technical term for these. And that's what this chart's talking about here when it says foamy, chunky. Is it ropey, blobby, snotty, or stringy? Yes, it's probably a pellicle. And while it's not dangerous, it can bring bad flavors depending on which, infection that it is. Most of the time, if it's a lacto or a calm yeast, chances are it's not going to be too bad. Sometimes we get other organic acids. One I can think of is a butyric acid. It smells like vomit. Sometimes you can let that run its course and it can create some sweetness. Sometimes it won't run its course. It'll just get worse and it'll stay there. And if you run it, it's probably not going to be that great. Maybe you can clean it up on a column. It's not bad for you. It just tastes bad, right? So a few things to know. Don't always panic when you see that white on the top like that, because chances are it's going to be a comm yeast or a lacto 9 times out of 10, or probably more than that. 95 times out of 100 is going to be comm or lacto. There's a few others, but most of the time it's going to be that. Yeah, yeah. Now, if you add sugar to your fermentation after a while, boil it, because it can add it. Now, if you want to add it and introduce, lacto, you can, but a lot of times I know for a fact that's how my lacto infection was from that sugar. I didn't put it in hot enough water. It was probably 120, nowhere near enough to kill everything, and enough to dissolve it good though, but that wasn't enough. But yeah, get it to 160, 80 degrees, really hot, dissolve it, and you can let it cool down, right? So it doesn't hurt your yeast, but that'll kill everything in there. And then you can pour it into your mash and, use your hydrometer to see, how it's affected your gravity when you introduce it after a week. And also about feeding, right? So a lot of times with a lot of people think, it's a fruit, man. There's a lot of nutrients in fruit. For us, yes. For yeast, no. So what we consider a good nutrient for us is not going to be necessarily the case. Even in corn, a lot of people say, "Oh, with grain, you don't need any nutrients." If you're just doing all corn, you probably do need some nutrients, especially if there's no malted corn in there. Malt. If you're using malts, you probably don't need any nutrients, and if so, not very much at all. But like with an all cracked corn or an all cornmeal or grain ground up corn mash, yeah, it would not hurt at all to add a little bit of nutrients. Will you need it as much as like, grape or plums or, any of your fruits? No, but a little bit would go a long way into helping. And a lot of people talk about dead yeast, keeping that yeast bed, at the bottom, rinse it out. When you get done with that mash, that yeast bed of all that flocculence and stuff at the bottom, of course, get all the alcohol off of it by pressing it out, and then put some distilled water in there. And that way you won't be putting chlorinated water in there and killing some of the yeast off, because you'll have some live yeast as well. So you'll have live yeast and dead yeast in there. And you add that to your next fermentation, boom, you don't have to buy any yeast and you don't have to buy any nutrients, because it's all right there. And as long as keep putting that distilled water in there will help get rid of the alcohol, and it'll help cut down the oxygen, which we know bacteria needs to build up. So that water will keep, it off the air, and strain it through a kitchen strainer, one of the screen strainers or whatever, and get any, organic matter out that you can. All the yeast and dead yeast hulls and everything are going to go right through the strainer. But it'll catch some of the corn particles, some of the grain particles, and other stuff you really don't need in there. It won't hurt, but unless you're doing a sour mash, it might be some things you don't want. But yeah, it helps a lot. But yeah, add some of those to even, your grain. Now, if you're using malted grain, it's not important. Another good nutrient to have, if you don't want to buy the diammonium phosphate or use that dead yeast in the bottom, bran flakes. I used to use them all the time. Bran flakes are excellent. Crush them up real fine and throw them in there. It's a great nutrient. Very, very good nutrient. A lot of people will talk about raisins and tomato paste. Both of those will always come up in a lot of discussions about nutrients. Both have some minerals and some things in it that are beneficial. I think a lot of times when people use raisins and they say, "Oh, look how it's working off, man. Those nutrients are coming in." It's wild yeast on a lot of your raisins. Modern day, there's not as much. I think a lot of times they use propionic acid and other things to kill that wild yeast off. But back in the old days, that little white powdery stuff on the raisins and on your grapes is wild yeast. So, there's not enough YAN, yeast assimilable nitrogen, and FAN, free amino nitrogen, in there with either the tomato paste or the raisins. Now, the tomato paste will add some zinc. There's a lot of good nutrients in there that will help. A lot of, biotin, other things in there that will help a whole lot that are great nutritionally wise, but it just doesn't have that nitrogen that we need. It's like feeding a plant, it needs that nitrogen. So it's getting other things, which are beneficial for it, but it's not getting that nitrogen that it needs. And this is where the yeast holes and the bran flakes will come in very, very handy, or malted grains, malted barley, malted wheat, malted rye will all have those nutrients naturally in them. But with the tomato paste, I wouldn't necessarily, it's great for like a grain, or if you're doing a vodka or something like that, or a wash that's going to get distilled to a higher proof, that you're going to get a lot of that tomato flavor out. I don't think that would pair well with peaches or with plums and other brandies. So I definitely wouldn't be adding that to my brandies. Whereas raisins will give you a good mouthfeel, and it does give you some wild yeast to get some activity going. And there are some minerals in there. If you break them up and grind them up and put them in, it can make use of some. But if grapes had enough nutrients in them, all these wineries would not spend millions of dollars coming up with diammonium phosphate and other different ingredients to feed their fermentations with. If grapes had it, then they just used the nutrients that were in the grapes, right? But there's just not enough there. That's why they have to do that. But there's some people that will swear up and down that those raisins and tomato paste is the best thing in the world. And I don't know what I'm talking about. Science is there. It's the science. It's, I'm not a science denier. There's a lot of those these days, Appreciate it, brother. Yeah, definitely handy. It's a good tool to have for sure. Use a hydrometer and a refractometer. Yeah. Now, a refractometer is it like a sight glass, and like if you're using inverted sugar, it'll look really crazy when your refractometer, because it'll be upside down from what you're normally seeing. So it's inverted, right? So that's pretty interesting to see. But refractometers work really well too. A lot of bartenders use those because it still will measure proof, even if there's sugars in there, whereas your proofing hydrometer will give you false readings once you start adding sweeteners post distillation. It'll change the viscosity and it'll totally wipe out a proofing hydrometer, but your refractometers will still work perfectly fine. And a lot of bartenders use those to, mix their recipes that have sweeteners, sugars, simple syrups, other things in there, and still understand how much proof they've got in their product after they try all their ingredients. Whereas a lot of times doing the math won't be so easy, right? Nice clean juice. Did you use any pectic enzymes? Yeah, it's common. It's very common to get calm yeast on peaches. That's very, very, very common. Unless you heat them to 160 degrees plus or use the potassium metabisulfate, you are very, very often, going to get a lacto infection or a calm infection, for sure. And it happens, and there's nothing wrong with it. You can skim it off. When adding the Greek yogurt, you want to put that in late, right? So you're going to put that in. You look at your hydrometer, you're starting at 1.080. When it gets to about 1.15 or 1.020 or less, between that and 1, then you can kind of add a little bit thin and maybe step add it in there until your lacto builds up. But about a 1.010 would be a good place to add it. That way, a little bit of sugar there. You're not really, your yeast is almost done. It'll finish working off. Then the lacto can kind of take over, and then you control when you want to run it. Don't leave it in a long time though. Don't let your lacto sit there for months and months and months, because it'll eat up a lot of alcohol. And it's not going to get any better after a certain point. So you don't want it cheesy for a long time, but and let it take its course. And a good Greek yogurt, and it's a probiotic. It's not, lactobacillus is in your yogurts, and it's good for your gut. It's not going to harm you. Winemakers don't want it. It's who wants to look at the floaties at the top of their wine bottle? It's going to turn a lot of people off. So the winemakers, it's no good for them. No, no. But when we distill, we get rid of a lot of that, right? We kill a lot of that. We kill all that off, and it's not going to carry through on your distillation. But mouthfeel will. It does. Good, good. No, no, don't throw it out, bro. It's still good. Trust me, it is perfectly fine. Now, if you start getting some colors and some fuzzies, and you reach in and smell it, and you can just smell what are these the fungus, the spores. That happened to me once recently. I did some jams. I had a bunch of jams, different fruits and fruit jams and stuff. They'd been in the refrigerator for a couple of years, and they weren't getting any good and any better. Been there a while and they weren't good. So I had a bunch. We do a lot of putting up. And so I'm like, okay. So I decided to make a little run of those. So I put them in there and put my hot water in there. Not hot enough to dissolve it, but not hot enough, obviously, to kill everything. And went on vacation. Came back maybe 4 or 5 days later, opened it up, expecting to see some goodness. And it's like whew, spores, man. It's like, choked me, man. I was gagging, and I knew that it was mold spores and it was not good. And it was horrible. That was one of the few mashes I threw out. But the white stuff on top is perfectly fine. Just skim it off, let it go, and coil it, and you'll be fine. Trust me. But yeah, if it gets fuzzy or it gets colors, yeah, it's cut, throw it, pitch it. What's going on, Randy? Good to see you. Yeah, Missouri, good, awesome state, man. They allow home distilling there. That's awesome. Up to 100 gallons a year per person. That's killer. 200 max for 2 people. Great state, man. That's awesome that you allow that. And hopefully other states follow suit and do the same. So hopefully Missouri will be the show me state and show everybody else how it's done. But yeah, it's a great state to be in, man. For home distillers, it's awesome. Speaking of home distillers, everybody should join this Hobby Distillers Association. Promote the craft and promote home distilling. Got that from Phil Billy when I got my tri clamps. Thank you, Phil. Support your local moonshiner, fellas. Hello, Miss Tammy. How are you? Good to see you. Hope things are going well over in Garrett County. What's going on, Frank? Good to see you, brother. I'll see you probably this weekend. Stuff you learned in mycology? Hell yeah, man. And definitely mycology goes a lot deeper than my understanding. But for those that don't know, mycology is the study of funguses and mushrooms and fungus and fungi. Funguses, I guess anybody laugh that knows. But it's fungi. I'm a fungi. But yeah, there's a lot to be learned. We were just watching a survival thing earlier tonight, and I were there, and she's like, "Would you eat those mushrooms on the side of that tree?" And I'm like, "Hell no!" Even though I know those are probably edible, no. $1 million on the line, I ain't eating nothing but meat and fish, man. I'm not eating anything I don't know what it is. Altitude affect gravity. Yes, altitude definitely can affect your gravity. It can affect your boiling points too. Most importantly, your boiling points will change a lot with altitude. So being at just above sea level is good because most things are kind of based on, and excuse me, most things are kind of based on sea level, but the higher up you go, of course, the boiling points change. So definitely altitude will definitely have effect on boiling points, especially when we show charts like this right here. We're showing that this is at a sea level, and I don't think it says it, and it probably should. But, earlier when we were talking, we were looking at the hydrometer. We were looking at 10% alcohol by volume. That's the 10 at the bottom of this chart. So when you go straight up, when you have 10, 12%, you're going to be boiling and having stuff come off your steel. When boiler temp, the liquid in the boiler, not the vapor, on the column, not the temperature in the thumper, not the temperature, but in the temperature of the mash in the boiler will be about 195 to 7 degrees before you're going to get anything cooked off. If you see people say, "Oh, I run my mash at 175 and cook off all the methanol because it has a lower boiling point," no, they don't. And if they say that, they probably have never done it before, or delusional that they've done it, because you really won't get anything boiling at all ethanol, pure ethanol will boil at 173.1, and everybody thinks because of that ethanol will come off our mash at 173.1. We can just bring it to 175.80. Theoretically that should work that way, but it doesn't because of azeotropes. And once we mix water, and of course there's other alcohols and other compounds in there that are also azeotropes, it will change the boiling points. If you notice, the more water, the higher the boiling point. Also, the more water, the less water you have, the lower the boiling point, right? So it does change the boiling point, and you will get water boiling off at 195. We know that water doesn't boil at 210, so how are you getting water at 195? Because you're not fractionally distilling, you're distilling an azeotrope in a pot, and you're not able to separate it in a column higher by temperature. You're boiling it, and then that's just the way it comes off the still at these temperatures. Now, when you run a second run and you proof it down to 80, which is going to be 40 on this, right? 40 proof or 80 proof is 40 ABV. So then you're going to get a little action at 180 some, but don't ever go above that, right? It can be hazardous. So, and a lot of people don't believe that either. So again, don't follow the science. 14 days. Yeah. I mean, technically it depends on a lot of different factors. So temperature is a really important factor, and making sure you use the right temperature for the yeast you use is also critical. But yeah, I mean, it can go 14 days. It can be 4 weeks, right? Depending on the temperature. Kind of knows. A lot of people in the fall and winter be like, I think I got a stuck fermentation. And it's not stuck. It's just slowed down a lot. And if you don't change yeast and go with cooler temperature yeast, and you still using that data yeast or bread yeast that likes it in the 80s and low 90s, then when you get in the 70s, it's going to become more dormant and work much, 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 much slower. So if you use an EC 1118, which is happy in those temperatures in low 70s and mid 70s, then you'll get better fermentations in the winter. So it's a good time to experiment with your yeast when your temperatures change and you can't control them. In a temperature controlled environment, then you can, pretty much use whatever yeast you want at any time you want. And that's why, it's good to have a controlled temperature if you're going to get a consistent output, whether it be summer, winter, or fall, right? Oh, yeah. Let me check my links, too. Let me put the links out. I thought that's what you was telling me. Yep. Let me get them links out. I'll be right back. And I stopped on Shiner Family, so we'll pick right up there. There we go. We'll get the remainder of these links out. Shouldn't take long at all. I didn't have as many this time. I'm sorry if I burp a little bit drinking those Cokes. Do a number on me. A few more and we'll be done. Wow. All I needed was just a few more, and I would have been done. Damn it, man. All right. Stopped you mowing. Well, that's good. Blame me. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just tell you what, man. Oh, bad Santa. He's a bad influence. That would be the first time that's been said about me. That's for sure. Yeah. I was the kid your parents didn't want you hanging around. Making that moonshine and smoking that pot when I was a kid. Well, no, I shouldn't say when I was a kid. When I was younger. And hopefully no kids are watching this. So hopefully your parents are. If you are, turn it off. It's heaven for you. Oh, yeah, that fish. Oh, after you smell, yeah, especially uh, the uh, the vomit smell, right? With the butyric acid, those organic acids don't smell good. I mean, the lactic acid can smell like a rotten milk, but the butyric, man, it's the vomit smell, and it's also the acid we have in our stomach to help break things down. But it's just an organic acid, and usually, stress yeast or bacteria and other things can bring that. Um, no, you probably could. There's probably some starches in there, but it's best to, because of the heat involved in the distillation process. Dolly, da- I'm just going to call you DC. How's that? So the heat is a big problem, and that's why a lot of extraction, like with CO2 and alcohol and other things, have low heat because it not only extracts better, it preserves the flavor of your terpenes and a lot of the flavors and flavonoids and stuff that are coming off, and you want to maintain those right in an extract. But the temperature it'll kill all that THC. It just denatures your THC, so it's really not good for it. Best to make a really high proof. If you can get a column and make a really high proof vodka, 196 plus proof, you won't get that green chlorophyll look when you do your infusion later. When you just put your buds down into the alcohol, it'll be an amber, and you'll get a more truer natural color. But if it's a lower proof and has water in there, the chlorophyll, you'll start getting green. And it's just an appearance, but more people will prefer the amber than the green. But no, it's best to make your alcohol first and then infuse your buds into the alcohol and let it leach out the flavors, the phenols and the terpenes and the THC, and then let it pull them out and squeeze them, and then you can do whatever you want with the bud, but it'll leach out a lot. It's similar to using. It's probably going to be a lot safer than using the butane method for sure, and using cooking the butane and all that, which has a really low boiling point. But or CO2. CO2 is probably one of the best ways to do it because you preserve it's a cold temperature and you preserve all those flavors. But yeah, with alcohol, just to make a real high proof and then introduce that, or you could just buy pure grain if you don't want to make moonshine and do it. Make your own high proof. You can just get that 190 plus proof pure grain if you can get it in your state. Some states don't, but that works real well. With the cactus, it's probably, I'm not sure if it's similar to the peyote or something like that. Not sure about those. I'm sure alcohol probably denatures a lot of that, and temperature and distillation would for sure too. Yeah. Surprisingly, the rain hadn't brought on a lot of my migraines and neck pains from my nerve damage. So, knock on wood. I usually get it when it goes from hot and dry to cold and wet. So, fortunately, it's just been hot and wet, and I haven't been getting those. But man, I hope you get to feeling better. What's going on, Dexter? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, hope everybody's having a good weekend. Of course you do, Mikey. You want to try everything. He's Mikey. He'll eat everything, right? What's going on, Lisa? Good to see you, sweetheart. Hope you're doing well. Are you all getting a lot of the smoky air up there? I know Minnesota, New York, and I was thinking about you the other day when they were talking about all the smoke. Uh, Hopefully you're not getting it. If so, hopefully you're able to get away from it. Can you use cornmeal and sugar to make a mash? Have you ever tried that for? I did that for about 30 years, brother. Back in the old days, that was probably the easiest way to make shine. Is pound of cornmeal, pound and a half sugar, and a gallon of water. Heat it up, cook your cornmeal. You're not converting anything. It makes what's called a thin mash. And no, it's not the best shine you can make, but it's easy to do. It's better than a sugar wash, and it's okay. A lot of people will browbeat you down. Oh, that's not a green conversion. I can't believe you would promote that. I still make sugar shine from time to time, and if you just want some freaking alcohol and you can distill it right, even then it's not so bad, right? Just to get some damn alcohol. If you want alcohol, but some people, it's my way or the highway kind of thing, and that just beats you down over, making a thin mash. But I did it for a long, long time. It's cornmeal, sugar, and Fleischmann's yeast that I'd get at the store, get it off the store. I wouldn't do it at the same time. They'll know. Try to buy all your sugar at once, and then, you're putting up jams and jellies if anybody asks. And then your cornmeal, having a big fish fry, making a lot of cornbread, and then when you get your Fleischmann's, that's, you don't usually have to say anything, but yeah. Yeah, we did a little 420 tippage in here. It's better now. Used to, they would frown on it on Facebook and on the others, but now it's recreational in so many states. There's not much they can say about it, right? I mean, we don't sit here and I don't smoke online or anything like that. I don't smoke much anymore anyway. It doesn't make me feel good like it used to, but yeah, I think it's that high octane shit these days, man. It's like, I like the mellow buzz. I don't like that crazy strong stuff. All right, you got the mowing done. All right, it's about dark here. Is there a benefit for using a bigger cap like a bootleg or horse head cap? I see some guys using a cone head on the cone. Yeah, actually, the larger volume caps create a lot of what's called passive reflux, and it'll eliminate a lot of the vol. It'll increase a lot of your water will condense off, and your alcohols will come out, and it'll increase your alcohol proof coming off the steel. So it'll give you some what's called passive reflux. Now, if you were to run a coil of copper around the outside of it and run cold water against that cap, then it would be more of an active. If you put it inside that cap and ran it around, it'd be almost like a deflagmator, right? That's the same principle. So that's the difference in passive reflux and active reflux. But the larger cone heads will create more reflux. Now, the lin arm coming off that cap has an important factor too. If it kind of goes up, a lot of that gets condensed in that lin arm or line arm, wherever you're from. I guess in Ireland they pronounce it a different way. It will reflux back down into the pot. If it's straight out, you'll get about half of it going back and the other half will go out. When if it's pointing down like the Kentucky cap, all that moisture and water will go on down and you get a little bit more flavor, lower proof, but more flavor. So that's the difference in the lin arms and the caps. The larger the cap, the larger the amount of passive reflux that you'll get. No problem. Hey, smoke was awful. Oh man. Well, hopefully the rain beat it down some and the wind helped get rid of it and kept the fire from spreading. I know there are a lot of fires up there in Canada. I know a lot of people in Minnesota and Wisconsin are getting it too. Yeah, hopefully they can get it under control up there in Canada. And, it's tough, kind of getting onto them. They need to keep their forest better. Man, when you have that much, the whole country's forest, right? They've got like 5 cities and the rest of it's just freaking forest, right? That's Canada. It's beautiful. It's remote. It's wild. You can't manage those like that. I wish, California could and should, but Canada can't do it like that, right? So, yeah, it's tough. And, lightning strikes and next thing you know, you got a fire. But, yeah, the weather's different. It's been pretty hot and dry up there unseasonably. So, yeah, that's definitely going to increase the chances of fires and stuff. But hopefully they can get them all put out. Hopefully it'll rain and nobody will get sick. No, I did do some dabs and shatter, early on. I was a little bit younger, right? When it first came out. My nephew was the first one that actually turned me on to it. And it was rosin. And it was, I guess, the really, really good stuff. And I went over, I like the flower. And he's like, here, try this. And I'm like, okay, hanging around. And I think he had Star Trek on TV, man. And I hit that stuff. Next thing I knew, it was 30 minutes, 40 minutes later. And watching Star Trek on the couch, just drop jawed and zoned out. And I'm like, man, I need to get home. And so I headed home, and I got lost. And I lived in this area for like 20 some years. And I mean, I was like in my neighborhood, and I didn't know where in the hell I was, man. I got lost. I was stoned. I was probably driving about 5 miles an hour too. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, yeah. Once you get, it's the same thing with weed. Once you smoke the same, it just you developed an immunity to it, and it just doesn't work the same anymore. So I was always one that I just quit for a few weeks and then do it again, and instead of just trying to find better and better and better, because that's what happens. You smoke the shatter or the dabs or the rosin, it's just regular weed doesn't do it for you anymore. I don't know. The stuff coming out these days is crazy compared to what, I smoked when I was younger. We were smoking 6, 8, 12, maybe 15% back in the day. 15 was probably primo. Now, 15% shit weed and 30, 40% is the primo. But I think the selective breeding has kind of changed the chemical composition of a lot of the stuff these days. And I don't want to hit on this too much, but this ain't a pot show, but it really has had an effect on the buzz and the type buzz you get. It's just a different buzz these days from what you get versus not. That's me, brother. Yeah, I play Santa too and every Christmas we'll do some charity giveaways and stuff, and the militia and stuff will collect toys and stuff. And a couple of years ago, we went down to Fort Gay and took care of a lot, or not Fort Gay, it's Old Fort, and Fort Gay's in Kentucky, north of Paintsville. This was Old Fort in North Carolina that got the Helene flooding, massive, major flooding there, just southeast of Asheville. Horrible, horrible flooding. The whole community just pretty much washed out. And we took a bunch of toys, and we took actually maybe 3 or 4 months prior, we took a shitload of tents, Coleman coolers, Coleman heaters, Coleman stoves, the, you know, uh, suit, sleeping bags, tents, lots of these things to a lot of people because they lost their homes. They had nothing. And FEMA was dragging their feet, getting help to them, and definitely weren't getting the trailers there and all that we pay for. Too much red tape there. But it was really slow, and it was hard. And granted, it was hard for them to get to a lot of areas too, even with the resources they have. But so we did a ground roots effort to get them a lot of stuff, and it helped them a lot. And when we came back at Christmas time to give out the presents and stuff, it's considerably colder, and unfortunately, there were still a lot of families living in those tents, and they were very thankful for us, and they were like, "Thank you all so much. We would have probably died, because we had nothing, nowhere to go, nothing, nothing, no help, nothing." So, and a lot of them were still living in the tents, using the heaters, using the Coleman stoves, and you know, tough, you know, living on, I guess they were using maybe LP gas cylinders by that point in time to power them. Who knows? But yeah, it was pretty tough. A lot of the kids, they were all very humbled and grateful. And it was very touching to hand out those presents to those kids. It's the little slightest bit of happiness that they've had for many months. Yeah, it's pretty strong. Yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same as the weed I grew up on. Stuff I grew up on give you little Chinese eyes, a little squinty eye, and dry mouth, cotton mouth, and make you hungry and laugh a lot. The stuff today is like, it's nauseous, nervous, anxious. It's a different buzz for sure, and paranoia. Yeah. And for people with PTSD or anxiety, it's just you got to get the right strain, or it's going to be horrible for you. It's going to be a bad experience. And it's just, I like the old stuff better. And that's why I don't smoke so much anymore. I don't dig the new stuff. But we did get some people earlier. We're talking about making cornmeal mash. Um, Good. Get you, like I said, about a pound of cornmeal to a gallon of water and a gallon and a half of sugar. So if you want to make 10 pounds or 10 gallons, then get 15 pounds of sugar and boil some water. Pour that sugar into boiling water. Make sure you kill all that lacto off of it. Stir it up good and get it dissolved. Don't scorch it. Turn your heat off and then add your sugar and stir it in real well. And then add your cornmeal and stir it in real well. And it'll thicken up a little bit. And 10 pounds, right, for 10 gallons. And then let it sit. And then once it gets down, to about a 95 degrees or so, or if you want to use, like I said, if you want to get a bag, you don't need the name brand, raisin brand. You can get raisin brand if you want to put some raisins in there to get a little mouthfeel. But the bran flakes, use a store-bought brand or the store brand. You don't need name brand, don't need the Kellogg's or the Post. Just the store brand's fine. If you can find a store that has them that's expired or about to expire and just say, get them at a reduced price or for free, or just tell somebody that works there, when y'all throw those away, let me know and I'll just come dumpster dive and get them out, right? They make great nutrient, and if they're expired a little bit, it doesn't hurt them at all. So you can throw them in as well. Is 160 right when it's over, so you'll kill anything off on those as well, and it'll help feed your yeast. When it gets cool, just add your bread yeast in at 95 and keep it warm outside. If you're in a hot environment, it'll be fine. Don't keep your barrels out in the sun though, because it can get too hot, right, and denature your yeast and kill your yeast off. So keep it 80 degrees, 85, even 90 is fine. But try not to get above 90. Putting it in a 90 kind of gets it activated and going, but you want to kind of let it cool, and it'll be fine. And it'll cool off and it makes okay shine. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best. It's not going to be the best thing you ever drink for sure. It's definitely not. But it will make some pretty interesting stuff. Speaking of which, been doing a little aging on some staves. Got some pretty good color there, man. That's a 3 grain, or actually 4 grain. Got oats, but get a little color with some staves. I started with a little more stave and took them out, but man, it tastes good. It's hard for me not. I'm gonna have to have a little sip. It's hard for me not to take a little sip of that. I'm going to. But it's really good. I need to sample it anyway. I hadn't sampled it today, and I need to just make sure it's not over oaking, right? Right? That's a good run, Curse. That's pretty damn good right there. Now, it's not Weller's, but it's pretty good, right? I'm going to have to get that wood off there, though. I don't want to over oak, but I can taste a little bit of after bitterness and tannins. So, yeah, they're going to have to fish them 2 little pieces of wood out of there, but that's ready to go, bro. That's good stuff. I like that, what it adds to it, though. It had a lot more bite. It's a higher proof. It's smoothed it out a lot and giving it a good charcoal flavor, but it's also added some flavor notes. Good. Yeah, Frosted Flakes, Raisin Bran, canned peaches, brown sugar. Hell yeah, man. That's a good mix. Damn good mix. Going to the Napping channel. For those that don't know, he makes arrowheads and spearheads and probably pipes. Who knows? Have a good one, brother. Good seeing you, man. Have a good weekend, brother. Yeah, that's pretty good stuff. I'm gonna have to have a little more sip of it. Let's make sure. Definitely need to fish those out. Definitely need to run it through a coffee filter too. I got some carbon in the bottom. That's all right. Good. It's got some good flavor. Pretty good. Gordon, you never did tell me if you used pectic enzymes or not in that. Anytime, even freezing your fruit though, a lot of people say you don't need them even after that, but it will help a lot because freezing it doesn't take that mushy sliminess out of it, and it's going to add to production what the pectic enzymes will break down. It definitely will add to your ethanol production, so it's good to use those on. And it doesn't matter like on a blackberry, as long as you freeze those and bust every one of those little teeny tiny berries that makes up one big berry, then each cell's good. And yeah, it is really good. Tana, it's good stuff. But freezing it will generally break most of those berries up. If not, muddling it will. So just muddle those berries, and you don't need pectic enzymes on raspberries or blackberries or blueberries, kind of, because there's a meatiness inside the blueberry. Strawberries for sure. You got a lot of any fleshy fruits. Apples for sure, peaches for sure. Anything that's got a lot of flesh in it, plums. Uh, Grapes, not so much. You can use a little bit on the grapes because they're kind of like a blueberry with a little bit of meatiness in there. Won't need as much as you would probably on an apple or a peach or something real meaty like that. But like on watermelon, probably not going to need as much. It will help break down a lot of that pulp in the watermelon. So that would definitely help. But you don't need it for like blackberries and and raspberries. Where those berries, just make sure that you get all those little berries muddled up and broken, and that's all. There's not much cellular or meatiness inside each of those little teeny tiny berries that make up the blackberry itself. So not as critical for the blackberry and the raspberry, and that type of berry, or anything that has a lot of juiciness and not a lot of flashiness. A little less important for sure. Leaving a pretty good aftertaste too, man. That's good stuff. And that's using barrel staves off of bourbon barrels. So I do get a little bit of cheating, probably a little bit, because I do get probably a little residual bourbon out of those. So that's probably cheating a little bit, but pretty damn good. And I think those are Buffalo Trace barrels. I'm positive they are, in fact, where my buddy gets them. He makes a lot of furniture and stuff at them. And I will say Big Beard and Steel Wheel, they're making a lot of stuff too out of barrels and stuff. I look forward to seeing a lot of the products that they're making, reclaiming, and using a lot of stuff that normally gets thrown out or pitched, right? So it's reclamation. It's good. It's good for the environment, and they're making a lot of interesting things. They got some good paddles for stirring, some pipes, and a lot of other things. I'm not going to let too much the cat out of the bag because they're wanting to. They're setting up at Maggie this weekend, and hopefully a lot of people will be able to go over and check them out, talk to them, and pick up a few items. I'm sure those pipes will be pretty good for those that like to use pipes. Adding that charcoal bourbon flavor to your pipe be pretty good. But they're great people. So if you get a chance, if you have Maggie this coming weekend, go check them out. Tell them old Santa sent you over there. But they're all good people. They've been working hard, and it's kind of a second job for them. So that's every one of their nights have been consumed with making this stuff and working hard, and go buy a few things, help them out, and say hey. But they're real good people and very respected people in the community. They've been around a long time. There's no crazy questions, brother. Are sugars from fruit different than converted grain sugars? Yes, they are. A lot of fruit sugars will give you what's called it's a fructose. So you get sucrose or glucose and fructose from a lot of your fruits. Sucrose is a combination of fructose and glucose. So it's a bond. So your table sugar sucrose is fructose and glucose bonded together in a disaccharide, which makes up a table sugar. A lot of your fruit will have a fructose, but it'll also have sucrose in there as well, not bonded. Some may be, some I'm not sure. Some fruits may have that bonded. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I probably shouldn't say until I research that. But most will have fructose and sucrose both in it, whether it's bonded or not. I'm not quite sure. Maybe in some, not others. But I will say that fructose does ferment a little slower than a glucose. So yeast definitely prefer a glucose to a fructose or consumes them quicker. Fermentations with fructose generally take a little longer. And that's not a bad thing. Also, you're probably going to use a yeast that wants to go a little longer, and a long fermentation for fruits is a good thing. Whereas for grain, it's not necessarily at all. In grain, you're going to be dealing with primarily glucose and cellulose and maltose, right? So those are probably the sugars you're going to be dealing with more in your grains, whereas in your fruits you're going to add fructose to that. Good, not a bad question at all, bro. That's a good question. And there's probably going to be some other lesser sugars in there as well, but they're not as prevalent. And xylose. There's going to be a lot of different sugars that are at a very low percentage in there as well. But for the most part, it's going to be a glucose, a maltose in your grains. But that's a good question, brother. There ain't no bad questions. The only bad questions are the ones you don't ask or the ones you get the wrong answers to. And then it's not your fault. It's just a bad answer to a good question. Let's turn this fan on a little bit. Every time I take a little sip, I get up on the warm side. I'm going to turn it on low so it doesn't make a lot of noise. I can usually see if I turn it on high, I can see it on my meter, on my sound meter, on my little soundboard here. That shouldn't be too loud. All right, he gets questions in. Or I'll just go off on some other tangent till we do. Oh, hell yeah, man. That's what you're here for, brother. Don't ever apologize for asking questions, man. Everybody's learning. Everybody had to learn somehow, sometime, some way. And, nobody was born with the knowledge. So I appreciate everybody here. Any question that you can ask, I'll answer them all day. If I just answered it 20 minutes ago to somebody else, I'll answer it again if you have that question. So if you have any questions at all, ask them. That's what we're here for, 100%. That's my whole purpose in being here, is to answer questions, because a lot of times it's difficult. A lot of times, well, I'll just watch some videos and I'll get that answer. I'll just watch some videos, or I'll ask in a Facebook group or somewhere else, or I'll Google it. And Googling it can sometimes get you a pretty good answer, and sometimes it can get you a shitty answer. So if you're going to Reddit or somewhere like that, or some old distiller.org, it's mixed. There's some great information at distiller.org. I used to, be a member there. I still am, but I used to go there a lot and help. But there's a lot of misinformation there as well. And some of those guys will stand by their misinformation to their dying breath, and you can't convince them otherwise. They're stubborn, dumb, and old. And I used to be the same way, but I was the same way about tomato paste. I'll be honest. I've always told people Tomato paste is horrible. Never use it. Don't use it. You get nothing from it. It's not Yanifan. And I was staunch and dumb. And, and then I did some research and I realized, right, it doesn't have Yanifan. And no, it's not a complete nutrient. No, it should not substitute nutrient. But it is, I learned, a good supplemental nutrient to add if it's not something that's going to create a bad flavor in whatever you're producing. So if it's not going to give you a bad flavor, you're going to proof it up to like a vodka or a sugar wash or something like that. It does have some redeeming qualities in some of the minerals and vitamins and nutrients that are in there. So I was wrong about that, and I'll admit it. And kind of the same thing about raisins. There are some raisins do give a good flavor. They do give a good mouthfeel. They're just not a great source of yan and fan. There are some minerals and nutrients, vitamins that come off of it that leach off that are somewhat beneficial. Probably not going to be a lot, but they do have a positive effect. It's just that they don't have the yeast or the yan and fan, the yeast assimilable nitrogen or the free amino nitrogen that you need for good, nutrition. Like your plants need that nitrogen to grow. Your yeast need that nitrogen to, that's like their protein. It's what they need to get the energy to continue consuming and making the alcohol for you. Curious on your opinion. Will I live long enough to see home distilling legalized, or just a dream? I think you will. I never saw I always thought that legal distilling would come much, much sooner than legal marijuana and recreational marijuana. I never dreamed in my life that would happen. The fact that there are Supreme Court cases now, the fact that there are a lot of states. See, the same thing is happening now in distillation that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago in marijuana. California, Colorado, Washington, a few other states kind of made it legal medically, and then before long made it legal kind of recreational, overlooked it, didn't give a shit anymore. Federal government, they're like, we're going to let the states make it. It's still illegal federally. So if you go interstate with it, and we catch you, we're going to bust you. Or if we catch you, doing another sting or something, and you happen to have that with you, you're going to get that extra charge. It's still federally illegal, but maybe not expending the efforts that they once did, trying to find it. Maybe they're not going to send out as many National Guard choppers in areas where it's medically legal and kind of overlooked as a state law. And maybe they're not going to enforce it as much as they used to. And then next thing you know, it's recreational in some states, and the federal government's like, well, whatever, we're still against the law federally, but not so much. And then it's like, okay, we're going to change the classification. So it's no longer classified with, heroin and LSD. Now it has a legitimate medicinal purpose, which allows it to be reclassified, which they did. And now there's, research going on and using it as medication as it should have for a long time. And there are some medical benefits from it. If I know some people hate marijuana and they'll say there's nothing good about it. There technically is. There's a lot of people that suffer from seizures and other disorders that it helps tremendously that no other chemicals have been able to touch. That being said, I think that distilling is going to follow the same suit. I think we're now in distilling where we were 20, 30 years ago in the marijuana. And I think, with Missouri, and like I was talking about earlier, and other states allowing people to distill at home, West Virginia just not too long ago. So a lot of states are starting to adopt where it's okay. Don't take my word for it. Go to if you think your state is legal, somebody tells you your state is legal, I'm going to tell you, I know Missouri is, and I know West Virginia is because I read that on their .gov website. So unless you get it directly from the horse's mouth, from the actual people that are lawmakers and their website, don't believe somebody on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere else, because you're putting, when they arrest you and put you in jail and charge you big fines and say, I don't care what you said read on Reddit, it's not legal here, then, don't take their word for it. So either ask an attorney or go to the .gov. I went to Missouri.gov. I read all about their laws. I read, what their legality is. It's still federally illegal, but they're in that state. If you keep it within your home, each person could do 100 gallons. If you have two people in your home that are 21 or older and legal to make alcohol, meaning they don't have any court orders or, something that says, that they got DUIs or something like that. They might not allow you to make it at home. They may have that stipulation, whatever. So if you're legally permitted to do it and you're of 21 or older, two people. So two people, no more. So up to 200 gallons for a household of two people, 21 or older, that are able to. That's a fact. Now, it's still federally legal, but in Missouri, you can individually do 100 gallons and with another person living in the home, 200. Can't leave the home. There is a permit process that is kind of expensive and you have to jump through a lot of hoops, but you can take it to like a wedding or a family gathering or something like that, but you have to get a permit to do it. And I'm sure it's a lot of headaches and inviting a lot of scrutiny and eyes that you don't want, right, to do. But, there is that option. And I would say probably to get a distiller's license in that state. Now, you still have to go through the feds to get your distiller's license, but I would say it'd probably be pretty inexpensive since they allow you to do it at home. Limitations are increased, right? So you can get one permit will allow you to do probably 5,000 gallons a year. Next step up permit 10,000 gallons. Then if you want to go the full huge distillery, huge high production, then that's going to be an additional fee, right? And most states will have, different stages that you can go. Some states will say, if you buy 90% of your grains and all your goods from this state, then we'll keep your license at this level because you're buying in the state. It helps the state. It keeps money in the state. And it's it's the way they can help promote grains and growth in state. And it's kind of a, thing that farmers do and extension offices help with. So you may be able to do that and then keep your license low. But but the recent, what's going on, Mitch? No problem, brother. You taking off? Thanks for dropping in, friend. So the most recent, that's a really good question, John. I would say yes. If you get any grain bed at the bottom, there's certain yeasts that are called low flocculent yeast. And when they die, they just don't leave a lot of yeast holes. They don't leave a yeast bed in the bottom. Most of your wine yeasts are like that, pretty low flocculent. But if there is any residuals in the bottom, absolutely save those. Like we were talking about earlier, siphon off the clears off the top, pour those into a jar, put some distilled water in it, get the alcohol off of it to help them survive, and maybe pour off that liquid, let it, settle, and then rack off that, and then add a little bit more water to, even get the rest of it off there. And maybe even, feed it a pinch of sugar every once in a while to help feed it, right? And perpetuate it and keep it in a refrigerator with a few holes in the lid so it can breathe. And yeah, you could probably it would be definitely a good thing to try because it's expensive yeast. And there probably are going to be certain yeast like the yellow label angel yeast that you may not be able to do that. And it may not be able to convert for you every time, like it converts the grain, right? It's got some koji fungus in there that helps you convert the grains without gelatinization and cooking them like we talk about. I don't think those are going to work. If you save them, you might just save the yeast, but that koji fungus may not be as effective for converting again and again and again. I have my doubts. Alan Bishop and I talked about that, and we're unsure. I don't think that that'll have a standing effect like that. Need to get Alan and Amanda and Woody on here and have a little yeast session soon. I will say, hopefully we can get the soluble oak guy on here. I need to contact him and get up with him. I'm doing a little experiment. That's why I'm doing the grain in some wood, because I'm going to compare the 3 grain in wood versus the 3 grain with a soluble oak product. So hopefully we'll have that coming up maybe the week after Maggie. I'm going to get up with him this week and schedule it. Hopefully we can get it here to you on the 1st. So 24th, 25th, 26th, Maggie. So maybe August 1st. Hopefully we can get him on and talk about his product, because so far pretty promising. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but it's pretty promising. Good question. And it would just try it. Washing it, good deal. Keep in the fridge after a week with distilled water. It's almost white. That's fine. So rehydrate it when it gets out of the fridge, kind of, let it get to room temperature, and then, pour some of the water off, of course. Make sure it gets warm, because it's definitely going to dormant that yeast, and they love warm temps. That blue yeast loves warm temps. So let it get warmer, maybe even pour some warm water in a bowl and let that jar sit there and kind of warm up, and put some sugar in there and shake it up, and get some of that yeast going, and see if it's foamy and productive. And if it doesn't give you enough yeast to do a fermentation, at least maybe you'll be able to supplement it with some fresh yeast and cut back on the amount you need. But just experiment with it. Yeah, it's awesome. That's part of the fun, man. What's going on, Stephen? Oh, you just brought that up when I was talking about it. Good question. Yes, I've got some. I haven't tried it yet. I probably will in the next month for sure. After I get back from Maggie and finish this experiment, I've got some potatoes to run, and I've got some brandy to run as well. But I got to run my apple again and make some apple pie out of it. So I have to do that first. But I bought a big box of cake of the Yellow Angel, the Yellow Label Angel yeast. I've already talked to a lot of people that's used it. As far as flavor, I'm getting a lot of mixed comments back, and I don't know if it was because the yeast got stressed or they just didn't like it. But some people saying they didn't prefer the flavor of it. Some people said the flavor of it's just fine. They've used it. It's great. And so that's probably just an opinion thing, right? Some like it, some don't. Could have been some stress that caused it to kind of create some off flavors that, that they're not going to admit I made any mistakes. I did it just right. But there may have made, created some stresses involved, temperature or acidity, that created some issues that may have been conductive in some of those off flavors they're talking about. As far as conversion, it's tough to measure with a hydrometer, because as it converts, the yeast eat it. So you never get a measurable reading, because it doesn't like just convert it all at one time and then the yeast come through and eat it. It's a constant process of conversion and yeast consumption. It does take longer, but from the most part, most people say it works pretty well. Now, as far as how well it works with high gluten washes with lots of rye and barley, and oats, I don't know if it works great with a lot of those. You'll probably want to use some glucanase, right, to get rid of a lot of the gluten, a lot of that snottiness, some of the Seb flow, or Viscoseb, to help get rid of a lot of that in conjunction with it, just to help it along. But as far as corn and rice go, it supposedly works wonders. I think it was originally intended for rice and making the koji, but koju, I should say soju. That's what it's called, soju. Koji soju, but it works great for converting the corn. Yeah, and you don't have to gelatinize it. A lot of people gelatinize it and still use it that way, which is fine. Let it cool and use it. But yeah, it's supposedly even cold mashing that it'll convert. I will say with cold mashing, you're definitely going to run into issues with calm yeast and maybe some lacto, because you're not killing off any bacteria, initially, which is what, a lot of those higher temperatures will do. So that may create some potential problems. I don't know. But I'm going to try a side-to-side comparison. I'm going to take exact amounts of corn, converted together. Exact amounts of corn, one converted, one just not, but the same meal, right? Ground up meal. And one's going to get converted with using high temp alpha and the liquid glucose. And then the other one's just going to get dumped in a barrel with the same ratios of water, probably 2 1/4 or so, to gallon ratio, pound per gallon. And I'm going to see, I do know it's going to take longer. But we'll see, if both of them have the finishing gravity, right? The finishing alcohol content and taste, have that same alcohol taste at the end. We'll see if it has about the same taste of beer, right? You can taste if it has more alcohol in your beer than the other. Um, we'll test that, and then we'll run it through the still and exactly the same temp, same times, and we'll see what kind of production we get out of each too. So I'm going to try to control the experiment as well as I can and document it. And probably late this summer, early fall, I'll have some results to share. But as far as does it work, yes, it will. Expense not too bad. I got mine on sale, so that was nice. I got it for $19 for a 500 gram thing, so that's a pretty good deal. $20 for a 500 gram brick. I'm pretty sure it's 30 something. So if you can get it on sale, probably be good to try to get it on a Labor Day sale or a 4th of July sale or a Black Friday sale or a Christmas sale. Try to get it on a holiday sale on Amazon or find it. That's about the only place I know of you can get it. I'm sure there are other places, but yeah, it does work. All right, brother. Take care. Thanks for dropping in. We'll see you Tuesday. I'll be back Tuesday, but not Saturday. So hopefully we can do a live from Maggie, maybe. That's what we're here for, brother. Yeah, and anytime you got questions, man, feel free to ask because, like I said, it takes a long time to watch these videos to get your questions answered. You learn a lot in the meantime. So watch George, Phil, Billy, and all of them. It's great. But I set this up specifically because I would have a lot of questions early on, and I would go to distiller.org or look up edu and .gov and try to find the science of it and questions answered. And it was tough. But watching videos and stuff and George and stuff is like, I'd have to watch 2 weeks to get my simple question answered. And I'm like, we need something for people that just have questions that don't want to watch, 2 weeks of videos to get a simple question answered. And they don't want to go to Reddit or Facebook and get 14 different answers. And which one do I believe? There's a lot of misinformation on there. And there's a lot of people professionally know a lot more than what they really do. For me, if it's an opinion, I'll let you know it's an opinion that I do it this way. I prefer it this way, why I prefer it, and that there are other ways. But when it's a fact, it's pretty much when it's a scientific fact, it's a fact. And, some people can't deal with the facts sometimes, especially these days when men supposedly can have babies, right? Yeah, I ain't saying that, but man, these are crazy times. Hey, you're welcome, brother. What's going on here, Billy? You gonna be at Maggie? I know you will be. Yeah, it works well. From what they've said, it does take longer. So be patient, and it's really tough to know when it's done because the hydrometer is going to read pretty much the same way the whole time because as it breaks down sugars, your yeast are consuming sugars. So you don't ever get that starting gravity high and watch it get smaller like we normally do. So just give it time. And I don't know what to tell you. I haven't experimented with it, but it's my understanding it does take some time. So when you start tasting a lot of alcohol, like you normally do in a corn run, then you'll know you're getting towards your end, right? And I guess that's about the best way, but you will be able to get a decent amount of product because this beer, 6%, 5 or 6, 8, 12% alcohol, you can taste whether it's 5 or 10%. You can taste the difference. So you'll know when it's ready. $33. Yeah, I knew it was a little bit more. I knew it was 30 something, 34. I was thinking, but yeah, I got it for, a pretty good deal. But I think that was on, it was a Christmas or Black Friday or Christmas deal this past winter. I just keep it in the fridge. You can freeze it. I don't know about this. Most yeast you can freeze. And then when you freeze it, it'll keep years, 4, 5 years. Technically, it'll last for a long time, but to make it, really vigorous and thriving, a few 3 to 5 years in a freezer. But when you transition it, when you get it out of the freezer, put it in the refrigerator for a month or so, and let it kind of transition from frozen to cold. And then the same outside, let it sit outside, and acclimate to room temperature before you use it and hydrate it. And always use a yeast starter. I don't care if it tells you to or not. Always use a yeast starter so you know the viability of your yeast going into it. That will eliminate one of your questions if you get a stuck fermentation, which is what I always did. It has to be the yeast. Throw more yeast at it. That's what everybody tends to do. Anytime it gets stuck, just put more yeast in there, right? Sometimes that's the worst thing you can do, though. So if you do a starter, starting by warm water and some sugar and shaking it up, and make sure you take that lid off, or else it's going to go everywhere. And set it in a bowl. That way, when it does foam over, which it very well could if it's very vigorous, then you'll know it's good. And if it's in a bowl, you can just use a little squeegee or a little spatula and get it out and wash it out with some of your wash. You're not going to lose any yeast that way, but you only know that it's good and it's good and vigorous and still very viable. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I paid like 20. I'll pull up my Amazon here real quick and see. Got a good deal. I remember that. Let's see. Let's go past 2025 late. I think I can just type in Angel and search orders. Yep, got it. December the 12th. I'm sorry. It was 24. 24, $25. Yeah, it's $25. I thought I paid a little less for it, but yeah, a little discount. We're definitely going to give her a try. And I've got some wheat and some corn. We'll go get some more corn. And hopefully, my farmer normally has the wheat. I got some wheat left over from last year. Hopefully he'll have some rye. It's about the time for it too, so I'm gonna have to see. I called earlier this year, and they're not going to be doing wheat, so I'm hoping that they're going to do rye as a cover crop. But that's another good idea I can do. Look on the old Facebook Marketplace. I'm telling you, it's a great place to find local stuff. Let's see if we got wheat. I love my wheat. Oh, yeah, that's in Indiana. Richmond. Oh, that's no Big Runway. Oh, $7 a bag. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, hell yeah. Hope it's clean. All right, we have to save that. That looks really good. $7 a big old bag. So I tell you guys, you get on here and find some of this stuff. You can find wheat. Here's some cortisone wheat that they were talking about. That's awesome in Crestwood. So that's an ancient wheat. And who was it? Maybe it's a video I was watching. Somebody else was dealing with this ancient wheat. It might have been an interview we had with somebody that was using it on Master Distiller. But yeah, that's $4. Hopefully that's not a pound. I bet it's a pound. Yeah, it's a pound. Never mind. Yeah, it's expensive. I was hoping it'd be normal. Wheat bran, no. Don't want that. A lot of that's wheat grass. Whole wheat flour, nope. Wheat berries. Feed wheat, that works well too, but that's in Indiana. A lot of, here's some. Yep, close by. Here's some shell corn. $7 a big bag. Thank you very much. Looks better than $15. That's locally grown. So help your local farmers and do that. It's better than Tractor Supply, and it's good whole. It's always good yellow dent field corn. So let me save that guy. It's in Richmond too, so I can go get my wheat. That's in Richmond. And some shell corn for $7 for 50 pounds. Both have the same price. The wheat and the corn is $7 for 50 pounds. So so I can get 100 pounds of grain for $14. Man, I love living in the country. Hell yeah. But is this the same? It's the same person. Oh my God. I don't even have to travel all over Richmond. I need to get up with that man. Hopefully that listed 2 weeks ago. Hell yeah. Well, I know what I'm doing this week before I go to Maggie. I'm not telling you. I don't want anybody going there and getting it all. It's on Facebook Marketplace, brother. What's going on, brother? Hey, I'll see you this weekend, my friend. You going to Maggie, ain't you? Good to see you, Joe. Joe. Oh, well, I missed this while. Sorry, I had my Facebook page up looking for those. Man, that's great, man. I'm stoked. I'm gonna get me some corn and wheat for $7 a pound, 50-pound bags. That's even better than I got my wheat last year. I got me a new wheat guy. I do need to search rye though. So let's see what we got rye. Because you never find barley locally. Yeah, I can find rye. A lot of this rye straw, though. I need rye berries. Yeah, rye grain screenings. No, they're screening at the green. Yeah, rye's a little tougher to find. Barley's even tougher. Anyway, ran my apple brandy after your advice that last podcast. Ran still, like you said, and dumped apple juice and dried apple thumpers in every third jar. Ended up with 1.5 gallons of apple towards 130 proof smooth. Awesome, brother. That's the stories we love to hear, my friend. That's great. Now just replicate it and try to improve on it. Maybe next time get some frozen concentrates to put in there with it and see if that increases the flavor. Put it in that thumper. But yeah, that's awesome, man. You know, you coming off 135 proof. That carries a lot of water, and there's a lot of flavors that are hydrosols and stuff that carry with the water. The ethanol doesn't carry a lot of flavor, other than its own natural sweetness and flavors. But a lot of the flavor bonds to water. So a lot of times when you get that lower proof, you'll get a lot more flavors. Sometimes it's not a good thing because sometimes you can get a lot of muddy flavors, and a lot of the same flavors through and not get the notes. But for brandies and for cognacs and things like that, yeah, it's awesome. That's good. Love to hear it, bro. Love to hear it. I'm glad you enjoy it, brother. I'm here to pass on what little knowledge I have, and to kind of keep it alive and keep it going. I'd love to do, some videos on foraging, hunting, fishing, canning. Who knows? Maybe as I get a little older and get a little time and more bored, and maybe I can get Ann to work with me and we can do some of those because I love watching. I can sit and watch somebody fish all day. If I can't be out there, I can watch them do it. Same with hunting. I love watching hunting and fishing videos. Maybe we'll get out and do some, right? And I watched this dude catch back-to-back catfish yesterday. One of them was over 100 pounds, the other was 75, and had them both on the line at the same time. Man, it's crazy. I'll see you there, brother. I've not planted heirloom corns, but I had a buddy of mine that had some, and he's like, man, I think it got a little moldy on me. I'm just going to throw it away. And I'm like, no, plant that shit. It don't matter if it's a little bit moldy. Get it in the ground. The ground will take care of that. And whatever comes up, you can use for next year. And he's like, well, I never thought about that. So he did, and he got some good corn coming up. But I have not planted it. I live in the city. I got tomatoes and peppers and all that in my yard, but I don't have the room for corn, but I'd love to. I did miss an opportunity on buying a farm in Moorhead, Round County, that I should have bought. And it was a 90-acre farm with 70 tillable, and they had corn all over it. And I was wanting to open up a distillery there, and just didn't have the money, to do it. It would have been a big investment, but looking back now, I should have done it. I'd have been in a different place. I probably wouldn't be doing these videos unless I was doing it out of the distillery, but I'd probably be staying busy. I wouldn't be able to do this. So who knows? Maybe there's a purpose. Absolutely. This may sound odd, but do you know if there is a add-on Bruzilla copper tops that acts like a thumper? I do know that Wayne from Ozark has caps that have a basically a deflagmator built inside the cap. So that will give you some active reflux, will cause higher proof to come out. It's not the same as a thumper. I think maybe he is invented, and I know Wes Sandman has also done something like this, built a thumper into a cap. I'm pretty sure Wayne did as well. I think Wayne may have done it first, but built like a thumper into the cap. So Wayne is Ozark has done something similar to that. Pretty complex build. But as far as Brewzilla copper tops, I know Appalachian Plateau builders used to, Sean Peterman and Sean and Roy used to have copper tops that they would build to go on top of Vevers and some of these Brewzilla brewers. And you could put you a ferrule on that and run into whatever, make it modular, and you could run into whatever you wanted to, come out of that and go into a thumper or something like that. Probably be cheaper, more practical. But if you do want something like that, talk to Wayne at Ozark. And I'm pretty sure he's got a cap that's a thumper and all built into one. And it'll be cutting edge, quite a bit different than anything anybody else has. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, so if you do, basically, I think you could probably give them a call at Appalachian Plateau. They do have day jobs, so this isn't their number one job like a lot of the builders. It's their thing. Sean and Roy have regular day jobs, and they do this kind of at nights and on weekends, so it may take a little longer, but I do know that they have it. Commercially, there may be some out there that are producing them. I don't know. Phil Billy would probably be able to hook you up with something like that too. If he can't do it, he can talk to Sean and Roy to find you somebody who can. But they do have them, the clamp-ons, just like on top of a Bever football that's got the clamping. They do make copper for that. For the, let me show you a picture of it. If you're talking about something like let me see here. Oops. There, we're scrolling. Man, this PC is new and supposed to be cutting edge gaming, and it is slow sometimes. But let me find like this. So some of them are called Digiboils. Some of them are called T500s. Vever makes them, copies them. But this makes beer, and it also can distill, right? So they make lids to go on things like this, but each of these are going to have a different diameter. So you either need to make exact measurements for them, or take the pot to them and let them figure out what it is, or tell them what it is. Maybe they've got one on hand that they can build it around. But if you can take exact measurements, they can make you something to fit it with copper for sure. Not odd at all, brother. It's no problem, bro. Yeah. Sean Peterman, Appalachian Plateau Copper. Check him out. Let me pull up their website for you. But get up with Phil Billy. Oh, what the heck? Search Facebook. Yeah. Appalachian Plateau Copper. There we go. Yeah, if you get on Facebook, just type in Appalachian Plateau Copper Company, and you can find Sean Peterman. Roy Crothers. I couldn't think of his last name. Sorry, Roy. I remember Sean Peterman because we used to have a J. Peterman company here, and it was unique. But yeah, Sean Peterman and Roy Crothers. Great people, very trustworthy. And I know for a fact that they made those at one time. If they can't get it to you, get up a Phil Billy. I'm sure he could custom make you something or find you something. Got a pot still and reflex for Brewzilla. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and they got the the sparging pipe and everything built into it, so they're excellent for beer making. And a lot of times we get a lot of beer makers that are wanting to kind of transition into distilling, and they got the leg up, man, because they've got it. Oh, they did build use for forever. Yeah, I know that they make them. Yeah, so but for these T500s and for the Brewzilla, yeah, just let them know the dimensions. They probably made them before, but yeah, they do make a good one, don't they, Frank? Yeah, so we get a lot of brew makers, and when they come in and they find out that their brew machines, right, are going to work just great for mashing in and doing that. Oh, they don't have to buy anything. Awesome. But they also make an extension tube that will sit right on top of this. Let me show it again. So you see where the clamps are at the top? They make an extension. So you can open up those clamps, and it's like, it's like a pot with the top, the bottom out of it. And it's just an extension, and it's got a gasket, and you can clamp it on and add 20, 30 liters to the thing to increase production. But yeah, if this is like the Digiboil and the others, it'll have a little column inside that's for sparging and stuff. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's great for beer making for sure. And if you're a beer maker, you understand the fermentation process pretty well. But with beer makers, what a lot of people don't know, and I know somebody asked earlier, is in the militia or something. Ask about doing all grains with no corn, right? So they're using rye, wheats, barleys, oats, and all those things, but no corn at all. Well, that's what beer making is, and there is a different mashing process for doing those if you do those. And with corn, we start at a high temperature to gelatinize it and cool down and add the malts and everything as we cool down. Well, with beer making, you do a step mashing process in the opposite direction. You start at 100 and rest, 120 rest, 140 rest, and then you take it to 145, 55. Probably 145, I think, is where you want that doesn't denature your beta glucanase, which is denatures at a slightly lower temperature than your alpha amylase. Alpha is like 155, the natural alpha, and your indigenous, or the alpha amylase that are indigenous to your grain are going to generally denature at 155 along like the powder, whereas the high temp, it's a different formulation, and it denatures at a much higher temperature. But your beta glucanase generally 140, 45, which is why we put this chart out. And it shows you at what temperatures you can add your grains in. And you'll see if you look on here for like wheat, you're going to look down. Well, you can't see it for that, but 145 degrees on your oats is the high end of your oats. On your barley is a little older, but on your malt, it shows 155 and 145. So you can put it in at those temperatures and it won't denature. But with most malts, 145 to 50 is a pretty good temperature if you want to keep some of that beta glucanase. But it's a different process, right? And different temperatures, and step mashing is much different. That's why most of your beer makers aren't familiar with corn. They don't use corn in the beer making process generally. So when it comes to corn, they want to go forward, low temperatures up to that. And they're shocked to find out that to gelatinize corn, you really need to get it high temp. And they're like, wow, they know that it's going to ruin everything else they made in the beer. But can you do both separately and combine them later? Absolutely. And that's probably the best bet. Right. Adjustable clamps. And those are the spring ones, right? That have like the little tightening thing and the spring loaded. Yeah. 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 They're much better. Those just adjusted with tension based on the bend of the wire. And over time and heat, that those kind of, get worse and worse over time. But the spring loaded type, the screw clamps, right? Those are much, much better for sure. But yeah, anybody that's used to using those to make beer, you've already got a leg up. All you really need to learn how to do is cook corn, steep it at 185, 90 degrees Fahrenheit for 90 minutes and let it get thick. Add your high temp alpha amylase at 185 and stir it, with your paint mixer, mud mixer, and drill. And it'll just instantly thin out like a water. Gets very watery. It hydrolyzes, gets real watery. Then you let it cool to 150, degrees or so, and then you can add your barley malt and let it cool, and then add your oats and other grains according to the chart, right? So you can add it at the very right side, and at the very left side is when it starts becoming less effective. So you want to add it in that range so it activates and works off real well. Above that range denatures, below that range it becomes less active or it's not as effective. So to get it to be effective, you need to add it in those ranges, and some of those ranges are quite large. But with the corn, we throw everything out the window. We go as hot as we can get it, like the small granules there, and we get it 185, 90. As hot as you can get it. It'll gelatinize quicker. There's no enzymes. We're not malting the corn or using any enzymes in the corn, so we don't care about anything getting denatured because there's nothing in there to begin with. If it wasn't malted, it's not activated, so it's not of no use. With the yellow label, don't need to worry about any of this. Just throw it all in there and let it do its thing. Just wait a month and let it. It takes a lot longer, but this, who knows? That may be the ultimate lazy man way of doing it, man. If you don't want to get into all this, learn all this, just throw in these ratios, throw in the yellow label, and leave it sit there for a month. Come back, siphon it off, run it. You don't have to know a thing. Right. And you could probably, sparge it off, get all your fines, and let it settle and save your big heavy grains. And it's got that false bottom in there. So you could probably even distill on the grain as long as you sparge all that fine stuff that might, settle during, distillation, get all those fines out of there and all the flocculants and stuff, let it settle and separate your clears, right? And then go through and sparge, all the fines. I guess you can sparge all the fines off your grain first and put them separate and keep all the big stuff, right? And then let that settle out. Keep your grain separate, let the fines settle and siphon those off. Put that in there and put your grain back in that bag without any of the fines and put it in. You could distill with that, a lot of your heavier corn grain in there and get a lot more flavor. But I wouldn't do that in any other still that doesn't have the false bottom. I know the Weber does, and I know that does. You can see it on the picture here. That little bottom pie pan looking, pizza pan looking thing with all the holes. That's a false bottom, and your Weber footballs will come with that too. And I just put a little coffee mug in the middle of mine to help support it in the middle for any weight. Yep. No, hell no, man. I'd say it's pretty good, brother. If you're used to making beer, hey, I've seen people, believe it or not, I've seen people in this hobby within a year and a half make stuff that could go on the shelf, literally. That's better than mine. They've only been doing a year and a half, 2 years. Now, I'm hoping that they just didn't go to the store and pour the old bottle into the jar trick, and say, here, this is, I've only been doing it a year and a half, try this, and I'm drinking Weller, J.W. Dan or something like that from the store, which is possible. But, you never know. And this is, you meet people and they're like, yeah, I've been at it a year and a half. Let me know how I'm doing. And you taste it. It's like, God, man, this is good. You can sell this, man. This is good. So I don't know. Sometimes I think people do buy these bottles and just dump them in there and sample this. Make sure that this doesn't taste just like something out of a bottle. Yeah, corn and oats are great, and a little barley in there if you like the barley flavor. A little malted barley. I like the flavor. Man, that's pretty good stuff right there. It'll be drink before I can do my side by side test. That's tasty. So those that don't know, barrel staves do a pretty good job. Buy barrels, and again, my neighbor makes furniture and stuff with it, like Big Beard and Steel Wheel. They make a lot of stuff. So he saves me all the small pieces that he doesn't use, and I'll just take my clamps. I got them over there somewhere. Here we go. Pull my soundboard off there. So I just use these vice grips, these little vice grips, and I'll hold my little piece of wood in it, and I'll torch it with this matte gas, and I'll charcoal all sides of that barrel stave, all 6 sides of it, just little squares, and you can put them in a jar like that and stuff it, and pretty much in a couple of days you'll get that color right there. And you get a little bit of that bourbon coming out of that barrel, and a lot of the vanillas and stuff, and not bad. I'd say it's not bad. Not the same though. It's not Weller. I love Weller. It's pretty good stuff. One of my favorites. And Joe's making some good stuff. Been doing it a few months now. I'm telling you, man, you will shock yourself and you will shock your friends, especially once you start doing some of this barrel aging and stave aging or oaking or whatever. Yeah, and using some of, I will go ahead and show it, this soluble oak product we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. A lot of flavor. So you'll be shocked, and wine, just learning the winemaking process. And like I say, a lot of my brandies never make it to the distiller because it's just such a good wine. It's like, fuck, I'm just putting in some potassium metabisulfate. I'm stopping fermentation. I'm bottling this shit up, degassing it, and it's going in the bottles. I got cases of wine, and so it's just too good. I'm not gonna distill it and lose all that flavor, a lot of that flavor. I'm going to, after you do both, and, brandy's great, but it has light flavors. Doug, you can do it about 100 and anywhere between 100 and 120, 30 proof. Most commercial distilleries will go into the barrel around 130 some. I think that's pretty much the rule for bourbons. Can't go in any over that. Let me make sure the exact number there. I'll have to go. I'm thinking that's 130. Thinking 130, 125. So by law, unaged bourbon, often called White Dog, which is what we make, must enter the new charred oak barrel at 125 proof or lower. I don't know, because I've drank some of these, I'm thinking they let you cheat, because I've drank some of these bourbons. In fact, I've got some over there that say barrel proof, but maybe it increases in some proof. And you don't distill, but maybe the angel share increases the proof. So maybe it decreases the proof, and in some ways water gets soaked into the barrel and evaporates, and it increases in proof. And it really depends on where it's located in the rick house. So some come out of the barrel higher proof than it went in, some come in lower. And again, it has to do with where it's located in the rick house and the temperature changes and where it's exposed to more heat or less heat. I think those that are higher tend to, have higher temperatures, and those near the outside walls tend to have a little higher temperature, where those in the center of the rick house tend to have lower temperatures. And as a result, you get different levels of evaporation, angel shares and devil's cut and all that going into the wood and getting evaporated, and water as well as alcohol changes. So, but yeah, I'd say 125, 30, but I go in, at 100 to 120. That right there was probably 120 that went in, and it definitely mellowed it out tremendously. It mellowed it out a lot with it just a couple of days. It's been in there 2 days and it got that color. It was perfectly clear 2 days ago, and now it's got that deep rich color, which is kind of fast, but I did shove a lot of that wood in there to get it done quickly. I went from 300 milliliters. When I shoved all that in, it was 400. So it was about a 25%, displacement. And, man, it had a lot of flavor, and it doesn't taste like a burnt down house and a forest fire or a, campfire. It's got a lot of flavor to it. So it does it very quickly. So don't over oak it. When you do that, keep an eye on it. But that was 120 and it did well. But 100 to 120 is fine. But I will say the higher the proof, the different it'll penetrate that wood versus the lower proof. And that same goes for like new barrels and putting it in your hillbilly glass barrels, and and it will be a different amount of penetration based on proof. So lower proof, you tend to get more flavor notes, whereas higher proof, you tend to get deeper penetration and different notes, flavor notes, and more tannins and stuff. So in color. So yeah, it can give you a little different results based on the entrance proof. But I'd say anywhere between 100 and 120 would be a good place to experiment. But always keep an eye on it. It's easy to over oak. Yeah. And you can use the spirals. There's lots of different products out there. Just finished up a rye run. Awesome. Now, did you use some of the, was it malted rye, or did you use some of the enzymes we talk about, the Seb Flow and the Viscoseb, to help break down those glutens? I know temperature-wise, the higher temperature you cook it at, the more of those glutens you have to deal with, whereas if you step mash up, they're not as bad. So following that beer making methodology. So if you're not using corn, it's really good to learn step mashing and research that, and step mashing up instead of backwards like we do with corn, to learn to use some of these glutinous grains. And it'll help you reduce that and protein haze, and you'll learn your rest periods and how long and what temperature to rest at. I think it's like 100 for 15 to 30, 120 for 15 to 30, 140 for a pretty good amount of time for your saccharification rest. Right. And there's no right or wrong. Some people may tell you what you're doing is wrong. In their opinion, it might be. Some people don't like barrel aged liquor. They don't like whiskey. They just prefer that White Dog straight off the tap, which is fine. I like White Dog too, but I'm just a freak for whiskeys and bourbons, man. I love that charred oak flavor. I love the vanilla, and all the notes and caramel that I get from it. I just really prefer it. Some people don't. I've drank some really good clear corn liquor though that I love, but a lot of just the regular old White Dog coming off. It's okay. It's good. It definitely gets you drunk and it tastes all right. It's fine. But I definitely would prefer an aged whiskey or bourbon to that. But some corn liquors just taste just like corn that I make with my cream corn and fresh corn, and that's that. I love that, but just plain like a multigrain and stuff. I definitely prefer to put a little oak on it, and using these staves helps. If you can get a barrel, it's even better. The longer you can do it, the better it's going to be. So, there's a 24, 48-hour deal. Is that any comparison to using one of these barrels? No, it's just not. Time, maturation. Fortunately, that matured in the jar a little bit, quite a bit before it was put on the oak. If that straight white dog coming out of the tap 2 days ago and then putting that oak on it, it wouldn't taste anything like it does right now. So it matured in the jar before that ever happened. So it's had quite a long time to mature. I'll just put it that way. But um, it's just an experiment, man. It's a hobby, and it's great to experiment. So don't ever let somebody tell you, unless it's a scientific fact, if you're trying to gelatinize your corn at 120 and people say you're doing it wrong, well, you are. It's a fact that you're not going to get it gelatinized at that temperature unless you have reduced the pressure to such a great extent that you can boil the water at 120. Then you might get it to gelatinize if you do it at negative 15 atmospheres or whatever, under a vacuum cooking or something. Because I don't know if people realize it or not, but as you pull a vacuum on certain things, the boiling points go down, right? So you can boil water at 100 degrees if you have a negative enough pressure, right? So in a vacuum, you pull enough vacuum, you can boil water at 100, 110 degrees, and you can probably gelatinize the corn at that temperature too, but that's going through a lot of trouble. But so there are certain things that are fact, certain things that are opinion, and there's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of good, better, best ways. There's a lot of, opinions that, maybe the good way, 10% of the people think that's okay. Maybe some of the better, ways, 30 or 40% kind of do that. And maybe the best ways, 60+% would prefer that. Nobody's right or wrong. If you're happy with the result, then you've done good. If you and your friends are perfectly content, then who's to tell you that you're wrong, right? If it's something that you love, like, you like adding a certain syrupy, cherry syrup or whatever to, your vodka after you distill it to get that cherry bounce flavor that's really strong, and, throw you a few cherries in there. Some people are going to scoff at it and tell you that ain't real moonshine. Well, no, it's vodka with cherries in it, asshole. Moonshine is just, what you call it. So don't let anybody browbeat you. If you like it, who cares what they think, And that's where we're kind of getting these days. And I hate to say it, I was kind of one of those guys at one time. If you post flavored, it's like, you rent it, But now, I don't mind as much. But I will say that most of the post flavored stuff these days are way too sweet, and a lot of the people that are making them are putting way too much sugars and sweetnesses into it. They could get a lot better result, and it still tastes like liquor. Some of it's just so syrupy you don't even taste the liquor anymore. It's just too sweet for me. Maybe it's just that I'm getting old and I don't like real heavy sweet stuff. But some people love it, some people hate it. It's just the difference in opinion. Right. I tell you, I enjoy the barrels are great to use. I've got a 5 and a couple of 15s that I got to use. And I got a couple of the um, Bad Mo. I got a Bad Mo barrel and a San Mo barrel. One West makes, and they get Hillbilly Glass barrel, but they also make jar tops too that are charred on the inside, and it's a jar top, and you just screw it into your mason jars and lay it on its side or turn it upside down, and it'll age, right? So a lot of different products out there. You can do wood staves, you can do the spirals, you can do the barrels, um, you can do the soluble oak. I mean, there's one thing called Moonshiner's Beard, and it looks to me like it's just wood shavings. It's almost like sawdust, but it's just long wood shaving spirals, of shavings that they've carved out of wood. And you throw it in the distillate, and it almost immediately changes color, instant change of color. That's a lot of tannins. With the staves, it took probably 4 or 5 hours before it got slightly yellow, 4 or 5 yellow hours, and it was a little darker. And then after 24, you saw the result. That's about 36 hours. So, but this stuff just put off the instant color, and that's just pure tannins. And tannins will give you good color. We use them in winemaking. I've got chestnut tannins, but they tend to be bitter. So if you've got a lot of them in there, something like that, that's just adding color and bitterness. It's not adding any vanilla notes. You're not getting a lot of these color notes off of it. Now, if that's something that you wanted to use to burn, to do the smoke infusion stuff for like a drink, that'd probably be great for that. But as far as throwing it in there for color on your liquor, no. So maybe as a smoke, to do this new smoking thing to give a smokiness to your drink, that would be one thing. Probably good for Miner's Beard. But there's Mister Glass Barrels himself. That's right, brother. But yeah, I like the wood. I like having the wood and the char and the smokiness and the color and the flavor, the vanillas, the caramel notes that it brings and the char, and I love every bit of it. I definitely prefer it. So check out HGB out. He's got some barrel toppers or jar toppers, and he's also got the stainless barrels. Those work well, but it does take time with those. But it's a lot better than using spirals and staves. If you're not patient and you don't care about flavor as much, the spirals and stave work great. But if you have a year and you don't mind putting in the time, barrels or the barrel tops work well. But it can take a year or two. But it's definitely better, for sure, 100% better. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's rewarding too, especially when you sit down with your buddies and you pass a bottle. And the best thing you can do is make a good 3-grain or 4-grain liquor, and age it, either with hillbilly glass rims or with staves or whatever you want to do, barrels. Age it a while, and then just pour it in a bourbon bottle or something and just pass it around and see if they even notice. And then after they all take a swig, they're like, wow, that's good. I didn't know like JW Dant was that good. Man, is this a different kind? I say, no, that's mine. And then, you can say, that's my shit. And they're like, no. And then you can show them you aging it and show your barrel off. And the next thing you know, your buddies be hanging around a lot more, right? And then you're going to have to say, all right, you go, I'm going to have to learn this hobby too, because I can't feed the multitude. I ain't Jesus, man. I can't just make this barrel just continue to flow for everybody. But yeah, your friends and family will be amazed, especially wine. My family's very picky. I tell a story a lot. My family's very particular and they're very outspoken, kind of like me. I'll tell you if I like something or not. I'm tactful about it, but you know, but they sometimes they're not, And when I first started making wine 10 or so years ago, um, I brought some to the Christmas dinner, and they're like, "Oh no!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I brought some of wine. I think some of it was a year old at that point. I brought my wine for everybody to try, and you could see they looked at each other like, "Oh shit, we got to drink this! Oh my god!" And I poured them a glass, or they'd pour the glass a little teeny tiny bit in the bottom of it because that they're like, I know I'm not going to like this, so there's no use for me pouring a bunch out. And they kind of almost holding their nose as they're drinking it. And I mean, it was bad. But after they did it, like, wow, that's actually good. And I'm like, well, I actually thank you, and they weren't expecting, a good wine. And when they tried it, they're like, wow, this is good. My dad's like, man, this is fantastic. He loved the cherry wine. And everybody was just digging it. They're like, wow, this is a lot better than we thought. I mean, my family, they buy, 40, 50, $60 bottles of wine. They don't go the box wine route and the cheap $12 bottle stuff. They like, well, my brother used to own he's an attorney, but he used to have a wine store as well. So he likes fine wine. And they tried this stuff, and even my plum wine, they were like, wow, this is also good, man. I never realized you made this. And it's like, yeah, and it's just your friends and family will be amazed, especially once you start getting good. And they're like, wow, and everybody wants some of that plum wine. They love the plum wine and the cherry wine. I just couldn't get enough of it. They didn't get to try any of the strawberry champagne though. That came a little bit later, but yeah, they all loved it. Now we don't get together anymore. My dad's old and getting a little dementia, and my mom's passed away, and we don't do all the grandkids are all over the United States, so we don't get together on Christmas as much anymore. So I'm sure there's a lot of other families out there that kind of losing the traditional ways, and I hate that. I hate it. I used to really look forward to getting together with family every year around the holidays. Not going to be the same. That I'll spend time with my daughter and Ann, and they get up with my uncle. He lives down in Tennessee. He doesn't get to come up much, so maybe this year we'll go down and do a Christmas get together with him. He's getting old. He's in his 80s. All right, y'all. It's almost 11 o'clock. It's on 10:55. I guess it's about time to start winding down a little bit. Great show tonight. A lot of good questions. A lot of good participation. I'm glad everybody's here. Wish Clint been busy. He was here early on taking a 5-minute break, but Saturdays is his busiest day now. So Saturday nights, man, he's hopping and making good money. So he's happy and taking care of some loose ends that he's got to take care of. He had some car repairs, major car repairs that he had to take care of, and I think he may have taken care of those, but I think he's liking this extra money, so he's digging this second job, and it's probably a lot of fun too, so he's enjoying it. But we sure miss him, and I'm sure he misses us. But gotta do what you gotta do. So we'll take him when we can get him. And when not, we'll just have to make do. But I sure like having him around. He's a good fella, good man, and very knowledgeable. Good night, Miss Tammy. Thanks for joining us. All right, everybody. We will see you all back here on Tuesday, the 21st. And then the 25th, I will be gone. This next Saturday, I'll be gone to Maggie Valley. Yeah, I hope so, brother. Yeah, we should have a good time. Solomon Sutton passed away, last week, and he's a big person in the community, and so was his dad. And it's going to kind of be somber, in Maggie this weekend. There's going to be a lot of tributes to Saul, so definitely going to miss him. Yeah, I'll see y'all this weekend, though. But we'll be here Tuesday before we go. And in between then, well, I don't know, between now and Tuesday, I'm probably not going to make that run. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday, maybe Friday. I'd like to get that run done before I go because it's, like I said, it's got that lactose on it, and I don't want that cheese on there for a long time. I don't want to get it too soft, and I don't want to lose a lot of alcohol to it. So we'll try to get a run. If we do, we'll talk about it this weekend or Tuesday. Well, we won't. Maybe next weekend when we talk to the hopefully weekend after next, we'll get the soluble oat guy on here, Cal, and get him on here. Very knowledgeable guy. I think he's more of a wine beer connoisseur, but extremely knowledgeable. I've listened to some of his stuff. Seems like he's very, very knowledgeable, but more into the beer, wine, and maybe the finer spirits, and the scotches and stuff. So maybe a little more highbrow than what we're used to, but hopefully we can learn from him, and maybe we can pass on some information to help him out as well. So anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here on Tuesday. Till then, peace out. Love y'all. Shine on, and see you Tuesday if I don't break all my equipment first. See y'all.